Chapter 1897. Waiting for resources to be delivered to us? Many people looked at each other in bewilderment. They had just arrived in the chaotic ocean, and resources were already delivered to them? Xia Xiaochan immediately noticed that something was wrong. The sky was crimson, and the surrounding spiritual energy was extremely dense. The Tao in the world seemed to be abundant too. Xia Xiaochan couldn't help but ask, "Did you do anything in the past day?" Luo Xiaobai was also puzzled. "Since I'm a pirate, I naturally have to search for prey. Now why are you waiting here?" Han Fei didn't keep it a secret. He said, "Nothing. Just now, I killed a king who hunted us. Another king had escaped. Since I don't have time to kill that king in a short time, I'll deal with his fleet first." Xia Xiaochan. Luo Xiaobai. Everyone. Han Fei didn't speak telepathically. He just spoke bluntly. What the hell did he mean by killing a king? One of them escaped? Now, he couldn't kill a king, so he killed his subordinates? On the Demon-Beast Alliance's side, all the beasts were shocked. Was Han Fei so reckless? He just said he wanted to kill a king, and that was it? Xia Xiaochan narrowed her eyes and asked, "Which family?" Han Fei said, "Yu Meng from the dream-weaving heaven was killed by me. Gong Zhan from the Avalon of 5 elements ran away." Xia Xiaochan was lost for words. "Are you sure you're fine?" Han Fei knew what Xia Xiaochan meant. She was afraid that Chun Huangdian would be attracted. However, Han Fei wasn't that stupid. Today, after finishing this job, he would have to leave. There were thousands of routes to choose from. How could he be discovered by Chun Huangdian? Han Fei said, "Don't worry. I just came out and need some resources." In fact, Han Fei killed Yu Meng, deprived her of her origin sea, and looted a lot of things. Among them, there were more than 6 million ultra-quality spiritual stones. But it didn't mean that the king had fewer resources. In fact, Yu Meng had a lot of resources, but they weren't the ultra-quality spiritual stones. Han Fei found Earth Heritage Essence, a 5th-level Dao pattern pill, 2 3rd-level Dao pattern pills, a sea-quelling bizarre treasure, the Great Dream Immortal Brush, a pool of black dragon blood, more than 50,000 spiritual fruits, and a lot of other resources. To put it bluntly, these resources could allow him to survive 2 Purple Thunder tribulations. Of course, it was still far from Han Fei's previous resources. However, Han Fei didn't expect everyone to have the same amount of resources as him. Now, the main purpose of looting resources was no longer as simple as just cultivation. It was impossible for Han Fei to maintain the development of the Yin-Yang Heaven with the resources he robbed. This time, Han Fei made up his mind to accomplish 3 things. The first was to nurture a group of experts, and they were none other than the people before him. The second thing was to try and find the other lost immortal palaces and ally with them in order to fight their way back to the chaotic Azure Sea. The third matter was naturally the opening of the Imperial Palace. Although the opening of the Dharch Palace would definitely lead to the deaths of many people in this group of people. Wasn't the purpose of growth to continue to be stronger? Once one of them reached the sea-opening realm and became a king, it meant that the Yin-Yang Heaven was getting stronger and stronger. About 8 hours later, in the Avalon of 5 elements, the big ship led by Zhou Wu was returning. Others might not know, but the people of the Avalon of 5 elements knew it very well. It was their king who guarded the savage abyss. There was a crack in the heavenly Tao. No matter what the specific situation was, they had to retreat. Otherwise, if the enemy won, it would be difficult for them not to be affected. He heard Zhou Wu say, "Everyone, give it your all. Half a day later, we can switch to our exclusive route. By then, there will be time to relax." During this void shift, Friday suddenly saw a large black ship with a skull flag appearing 1,000 miles away. Clatter at that time, Zhou Wu's heart had completely sunk into silence. The Avenger had actually appeared in the world? Zhou Wu couldn't help but have a bad feeling. The Avenger has not appeared for 10 years. What does it mean now that it has appeared? Is Han Fei back? Thinking of the scene of the king's death just now, and then looking at the Avenger opposite, Zhou Wu thought of an extremely terrible possibility. Something had happened to the king. Zhou Wu shouted, "Hurry, rush out of the route. Go anywhere." While Zhou Wu was shouting, Han Fei said, "This is your first battle after leaving the cage of the Yinyang heaven and the Waterwood heaven. From now on, there will be casualties in the battles you have to experience. I will only take action when the battle power is extremely unbalanced. For the rest of the time, you have to rely on yourselves. Now, kill your way over and find opponents of the same level. Kill everyone on that ship. Leave no one alive." Swish, swish, swish. Han Fei's words were very straightforward. He was clearly telling them that they had to sharpen these whetstones themselves. If they killed themselves, don't blame me. Subconsciously, Luo Xiaobai shouted, "Half-King, block their way. The others, find your own opponent." BM at this moment, a terrifying energy cannon burst out from the Avenger. With a power beyond that of an ordinary half-king, it directly bombarded the big ship of the Avalon of 5 elements. As a result, the enemy's ship formation lit up. An attack beyond the half-king realm failed to directly blast the enemy's ship formation. Of course, although it didn't completely shatter the enemy's ship formation, it blasted the enemy back dozens of kilometers. A crack also appeared on the ship formation. After all, how could an ordinary ship resist the power of the main ship of the Avenger? However, Han Fei said, the enemy also has such an energy attack. This time, even the Insect King and Jiao Mengyue couldn't help but be shocked. In the chaotic Azure Sea, could a ship launch such a terrifying attack? Most of the people on Han Fei's side had not reached the half-king realm. Therefore, if they were really hit by such a blow, they would almost die. However, Xia Shaochan said, "Be quick. Otherwise, they will run away." Everyone immediately came back to their senses. However, when they came back to their senses, they saw that Xia Shaochan had already rushed more than half the distance. They were only more than 200 kilometers away from the enemy's big ship. As a matter of fact, the crowd charged out in unison. Although this energy cannon was powerful, there was only one. It was not mobile enough. In addition to attacking ships, it still had a lot of opportunities to attack people. Even if it could attack people, it could only attack one person at a time. There were a total of 33 people on Zhou Wu's ship. Among them, 12 were half-venerables, and only 21 were venerables. Among them, Zhou Wu was a peak-stage venerable. Therefore, in this battle, the Insect King and Jiao Mengyue were just holding the line. For a time, the sky was full of brilliance. The people brought by Han Fei all thought that the outside world was very terrifying. They felt that even if they were in the same realm, they couldn't underestimate them. Therefore, they attacked with all their strength. The ship formation was bombarded with clanking sounds. Fortunately, Xia Shaochan helped them and smashed their ship formation with one blow. As soon as the ship formation was broken, Zhou Wu knew that he was doomed. Chen Xiang shouted, "This person is the strongest. Let me test him." The vines of the void directly moved through the void, separating the 12 demigods from each other. This guy was very shrewd. On this trip, most of the disciples of the Thug Academy were in the explorer realm. It was best to leave those explorers for them to practice. Chu Linyuan shouted, "Su Sanqian, 5 of them are yours and the rest are ours." After all, they had never fought with these people before. Therefore, in the beginning, no one dared to fight above their level and carefully divided the battlefield. Only Zhang Xuanyu, Lu Renquang, and Luo Xiaobai. The 3 of them directly surrounded the 2 advanced venerables. On the Avenger, Han Fei watched this scene quietly. Among them, these people were all carefully selected by him, so their strength was naturally not a problem. Luo Xiaobai directly used the demon plant's divine waterfall. In that scene, the demon plants sealed the sky and tens of thousands of tendrils entangled. Zhang Xuanyu seemed to have comprehended something from Han Fei's sword Dao. Therefore, when he struck with his spear, he poured half of his strength into it. In the spear light there was a divine soul-killing technique. Pucci. BM. How could the advanced venerable think that a peak-level mid-level venerable could launch such a ruthless attack? He didn't block it and exploded on the spot. In order not to give them a chance to escape, Lu Renquang activated the sky-swallowing technique and sucked in the remains of the person in the black hole. In the black hole, a knife light flickered. Soon after, that person was chopped to death. At this moment, the few of them were a little surprised. Zhang Xuanyu said, "It doesn't seem that difficult to fight. I feel that he's not as good as those people from Black Blood City in the cage." Luo Xiaobai said, "I agree. Let's look at the others." On the other side, Su Sanxian was naturally fighting a cooperative battle. At this moment, Su Sanxian's body was covered in thousands of threads. In the void, a large number of spider threads passed through. In Gu Qi's armor box, his sword was like a dragon. According to the words of the Thug Academy, if he attacked, he would use a big move. If the battle started, he would give him the most ruthless one. Gu Qi's target was a half-venerable whose body had turned purple gold. Even though his strength was 2 realms lower, Gu Qi still used his full strength. Crack crack. Although the sharp blade in Gu Qi's box broke inch by inch, cracks also appeared on the half-venerable's purple gold body. Kill! Blood flowed from the corner of Gu Qi's mouth. He shattered the sword and stabbed the other half of the sword into the other party's body. But in the end, there was still a gap of 2 realms. Therefore, this attack didn't work. The person flipped his hand and a purple beam shot back. However, a huge copper hammer struck out, shattering the purple light with a terrifying force. Just as the hammer was about to hit the person's face, a divine soul-killing technique shot out from between the person's eyebrows. Xingyu stepped back and the soul-driving array protected Su Daiji. Bam! Gotcha! Daji's hammer struck and directly smashed the person's purple gold head. However, the moment before that person died, a green bead smashed at Su Daiji. Fortunately, Gu Qi's shield array had already appeared. The two of them were sent flying dozens of kilometers and vomited blood. At the same time, this half-venerable was at least killed. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. In the eyes of everyone else, the ferocity of the Thug Academy was extremely extraordinary. In the blink of an eye, an advanced explorer had forcefully killed a half-venerable at the price of exchanging injuries. This wasn't something an ordinary person could do. During this period, if Su Sanxian hadn't controlled it well, if Xingyu hadn't helped in time, and if Yixian hadn't held back the others, Gu Qi and Su Daiji wouldn't have been able to kill a half-venerable so smoothly. Boom, boom. On one side were the experts of the Avalon of 5 elements who were preparing to escape, and on the other side were the members of the Avenger who were determined to take them down at all costs. The outcome was obvious. In just 5 minutes, more than half of the Avalon of 5 elements had died. Most of the people from the Avenger were injured, but they couldn't hide the joy on their faces. In just one battle, they realized one thing: they weren't weaker than others. Chapter 1898. It was easy to gain momentum on a life-and-death battlefield. A great victory in the first battle would naturally stimulate the confidence in everyone's hearts, and it could also raise the morale of their side to the highest point. Of course, not all the people of the Avalon of 5 elements were weak. Some people's great paths were also extraordinary. At this moment, an advanced venerable was fighting the white ferret. The man activated the 5 elemental fire barrier and a secret technique, exerting the combat power of a peak-level venerable. Under the all-out battle, the white ferret was forced to retreat repeatedly. However, the white ferret was picked by Han Fei. At this moment, the white ferret was also furious. He used the soul-separating claw and cut off half of his opponent's body at the risk of his snow-white fur being burned off, before he escaped into the void. However, it was obvious that it was difficult to kill the opponent even if he tried his best. The white ferret looked around and found that the others had more or less gained something. He had lost all his face. Half an hour later, the battle came to an end. Because there were many demi-kings and peak-level venerables controlling the battlefield, Han Fei's side certainly wouldn't lose this battle, but a lot of people were injured. Only one opponent ran out from the beginning to the end, and that was the one who fought the White Ferret. A moment later, a group of people grabbed the enemy's sun-moon shells and put away the big ship of the Avalon of 5 Element. They all exclaimed. Someone was surprised. Wow! If you don't believe me, I have extremely rare Dao-seeking fish here. Someone was surprised. I have more than 100,000 ultra-quality spiritual stones here. Someone was shocked. I seem to have gotten an ultra-quality divine weapon. Someone was stunned. So many spiritual fruits. When these people returned, still immersed in the joy of their harvest, they heard Han Fei say, "Who can tell me what mistakes you made in this battle?" Seeing that Han Fei was going to lecture them, everyone fell silent and held the sun-moon shells, waiting to be scolded. Judging from Han Fei's tone, they must have made mistakes. The White Ferret's face was flushed. Han Fei was probably going to say that he was the only one who failed to defeat his opponent. Luo Xiaobai concluded, "In this battle, everyone used too much strength. The people in the chaotic ocean are actually not as strong as we thought. So, in the beginning we poured too much power into these people. There are many experts in the outside world, and we can face danger at any time. Therefore, it is necessary to preserve some of our strength." After that, Zhang Xuanyu said, "The most important thing is that everyone is fighting too hard. They don't hesitate to exchange injuries for injuries to kill their opponent. However, no matter what the situation is, staying alive is the most important thing." Han Fei immediately nodded. Yes, there are infinite resources in the chaotic Azure Sea. Killing 1 or 2 people was not considered a hero. Protecting one's life was always the first priority. White Ferret, do you think that anyone will look down on you just because your enemy ran away? White Ferret, Han Fei said, "The most unwise choice you made was to try to fight the man just now. But have you ever thought about it? You're not just representing yourself, you're representing the entire White Ferret branch. Did you forget about the future of the beast race by risking your life to fight him? Just now, since I was here, and since there were other half-king realm powerhouses here as well, how did he manage to escape?" White Ferret seemed to understand something and thought to himself, "Yes, I may not be able to kill that person. However, how powerful was the human king? It could be said that as long as the pressure descended, that person had nowhere to run. The reason why that person ran away was obviously Han Fei's deliberate action. Why did he deliberately let this person go? He still didn't quite understand. Did the human king not want him to fight? Han Fei said, "Now, in the chaotic Azure Sea, we are pirate. Plundering resources is what we have to do. However, we are pirates with principles. The enemies of the Yin-Yang Heaven are the Grand Purity Palace, the Wuji Heaven, the Golden Crow Heaven, the Medicine King Heaven, the Dream Weaving Heaven, the 5 Elements Heaven, the Wild Corpse Heaven, and the Gods Sealing Heaven. On the contrary, the 100 Demon Clan, the Human Clan at the bottom of the sea, and the Merfolk Royal Clan are not our main enemies. We want them to think that the human race is fighting amongst themselves." "Oh no, I'm wrong. The 36 Immortal Palaces are fighting amongst themselves." At this moment, Han Fei said fiercely, "We must keep the internal affairs under control. Let me tell all of you in advance that what I'm going to do on this trip is to break through the 36 Black Heavens. At least, I want to be on par with the Grand Purity Palace, the Wuji Heaven, and the other immortal palaces. Only in this way can we protect the Yin-Yang Heaven. Of course, if we can suppress the 36 Black Heavens and lead them. This is our greatest pursuit." Han Fei spread his hand. "You all performed well when I preached. In my opinion, all of you have the potential to become kings. In 22 years, I will take you to explore the Imperial Palace. Your chance to become kings is there. Before that, the only thing you have to do is to become half-kings. And to become half-kings you have to survive first. Wow, Han Fei's words made everyone's heart sway. A smile appeared on Yin-Er's face. The big brother she had seen in the past had returned. He was domineering and decisive. She was happy but also a little sad. Because after getting along with Han Fei for a long time, she knew that Han Fei also liked to live a normal life. However, Han Fei had his own choice. He had to protect the Yin-Yang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven. He had to fight against the Grand Purity Palace and the Wuji Heaven. He had to face the threat of the sea demons. He had too many things to bear. With so many burdens on Han Fei's shoulders, he had to be so domineering and arrogant. Luo Xiaobai and the others naturally understood what Han Fei was talking about. Before they left the Yin-Yang Heaven, they already had enemies and had simulated the scene of the battle between the two sides countless times. In this battle, they slaughtered 20 venerables on the other side. This seemed to be an amazing victory. However, in this battle, it was also necessary to sum up the experience. The first thing they realized was that these people from the chaotic Azure Sea were not as strong as they thought. Some of them even showed a lack of combat experience. Lack of combat experience could only mean one thing. They were protected by their own powerful sects, so they didn't have enough experience. In terms of combat experience, the Demon Beast Alliance, the Immortal City, the Forest of Horrors, and even the Cloud Sea Divine Tree were all experienced in combat. Which one of them had not experienced hundreds of battles and fought for thousands of years? If not, how could they show such overwhelming power today? The white ferret couldn't help but lower his head and said, "I'm ashamed. Today you must learn from me. Don't give up your lives easily." Han Fei said, "Okay, this is just the first battle. Don't think that you can't fight with your life. Of course, you can fight with your life, but you have to know when. Nowadays, speed is the most important thing in a war. You have too few resources. In the chaotic Azure Sea, if you want to cultivate quickly, the first thing you need is all kinds of resources. Without resources, you are nothing. Now, get ready to go. This is the first step of revenge for the Avenger." 1 year later, the story of the Avenger's appearance had already spread throughout the chaotic Azure Sea. After the Avenger appeared, the first news was that Han Fei had killed Yu Meng of the Dreamweaver God. Many immortal palaces said that this matter would not be tolerated. However, most of the immortal palaces were just shouting slogans. Everyone knew why Han Fei was looking for someone from the dream-weaving heavens. If he didn't wait for them, why would they come to him? Besides, how could Han Fei not know which forces were responsible for the Yin-Yang Heaven's banishment to the barbaric abyss? What if they jumped out and provoked the Avenger? That would be idiotic. Back then, when this information had been revealed, the 100 demons and the humans at the bottom of the sea had all mocked them. A king of the 100 demons laughed. "I'd like to see how long the internal strife of the human race will last. It's best if Han Fei can kill all 36 immortal palaces." The seabed humans even made a statement. As long as the Avenger doesn't attack the seabed humans will never be enemies with the Avenger. No one was an idiot. They more or less knew about the past grievances of the 36 immortal palaces. In the following year, the Avenger destroyed 2 large ships of the Berserk Corps Heaven, killed 1 half-king realm powerhouse, and killed as many as 40 other venerables. The Avenger's third attack was beyond everyone's expectations. It directly attacked the Grand Purity Palace. It decisively took a large ship from the Grand Purity Palace to the Medicine King Heaven. At that time, there were 5 half-kings on the ship, and 3 of them were 5 fallen. There were 43 venerables on the ship, and 19 of them died, and they all fled. To everyone's surprise, Han Fei didn't kill them all. Instead, he said, "Those who have hunted the Yin-Yang Heaven, please face the wrath of the Avenger." After the third Avenger operation, the Avenger disappeared for a full 4 months. The fourth attack took 38 minutes, looting a large ship of the Wuji Heaven and killing 13 venerables. For pirates, the probability of attacking 4 times in a year was negligible. Putting aside the fact that there weren't that many people for you to rob, just the pirates were taking the internal route. Whether you could accurately capture the right time to attack was a problem. It had been a year since the first time he made his move. At this moment, on a public sea route leading to Wu Emperor City, a large black ship was drifting alone in the nearby sea that was not part of the sea route. If this wasn't the Avenger, who could it be? At this moment, everyone was waiting. Xingyue was breaking through. Gotcha! A storm of spiritual energy gathered, and someone laughed. Xingyue, you're the slowest one. You've only broken through to the Peak Explorer realm now. You can't take it anymore. Su Sanxian said, the Peak Explorers of our Thug Academy can't be judged by common sense. In fact, just as Su Sanxian had said, their Peak Explorers had all cultivated the pure mystic body. Before reaching this realm, their strength had dropped to that of a beginner explorer. The reason why they could cultivate back so quickly was because they were fighting every day. In the chaotic Azure Sea, as long as it wasn't a sea route, it was a trial ground. There were sea monsters of all levels and powerful opponents. It was hard not to encounter them. In just a year, everyone on the Avenger could be described as having been reborn. This was the result of countless life and death battles. In Han Fei's words, this was a basic trial. This kind of training was completely different from encountering enemies. Exploring non-sea routes was simply courting death. In this year, Zhang Xuanyu, Lu Renquang, and Luo Xiaobai had all broken through, and their strength could be said to have soared. At this moment, Han Fei stood at the bow of the ship. 3 days later, we will ambush the marauders. This time, there are no rules or restrictions on your strength. Do your best to kill anyone. For this, I've found reinforcements, 6.5 kings. Chapter 1899. The crew members heard that they had reinforcements. 6 half-kings? They couldn't help but exclaim. Even Luo Xiaobai was very surprised. Didn't Han Fei just go to the martial emperor's city? Why did he bring reinforcements back? The phantoms of mountains and rivers emerged around them, and Song Kaiyuan, Li Kaitian, and the others appeared one after another. Song Kaiyuan and the others were also slightly surprised when they saw them. It turned out that the crew of the Avengers was this group of people? There were even 7 cultivators who were not at the Venerable Realm? Their strength was a bit weak. After all, this year, the news that the Avenger was in the Martial Emperor City was spreading all over the sky. Countless people went to the Martial Emperor City to buy information and ask where the Avenger was. However, the Avenger was elusive, and the Martial Emperor City was not omnipotent. Except for the location and details of the latest battle, they couldn't give any more detailed information. Song Kaiyuan and the others had also heard that the people of the Avenger were actually not as strong as they thought. However, despite what everyone said, the Avenger had committed one crime after another, and no one had managed to take it down. Therefore, they couldn't help but wonder what the people on the Avenger were like. Now, Song Kaiyuan and the others found that the strength of these people was really a bit uneven. There were only 4 people at the Half-King realm. There were only 6 peak stage venerables. They had forcefully plundered the ship of the Supreme Purity Palace with just 1 ship. However, with Han Fei, they weren't surprised at how strong the Avenger was. They knew that these people should be the top seedlings brought out by Han Fei from the Yin-Yang heaven. The reason why he brought them out was to nurture and train them. Otherwise, Han Fei only needed to bring the strongest people, and there was no need to bring such a team with uneven strength. While Song Kaiyuan and the others were surprised, the people on the Avenger were also guessing the origins of Song Kaiyuan and the others. In fact, it was completely an accident that Han Fei could meet Song Kaiyuan and the others. Originally, Han Fei went to the Martial Emperor City this time to buy some resources and get some hunting information. However, he met Song Kaiyuan and the others. It turned out that they had been staying in the Martial Emperor City. Song Kaiyuan guessed that Han Fei would come back in 30 years at most. Anyway, to them, 30 years was actually nothing. Even if he were to cultivate in seclusion, it would only take him a short 30 years. However, Han Fei appeared much earlier than they expected. Han Fei took a look. How could he not make use of the 6 thugs? Han Fei knew that the major immortal palaces of the Taishan heaven kept people by his side to seek opportunities. However, these people were indeed very useful. It would be a waste not to use it. Each and every one of them was a peak half-step monarch of their respective immortal palaces. To put it bluntly, any one of them could easily beat up 2 ordinary demi-kings. However, they were not family after all, so the distance between them was immediately highlighted. Han Fei didn't care about the distance. As long as they fought a few more times and had Song Kaiyuan and the others give them some pointers, the distance between them would quickly disappear. Of course, for the sense of distance to disappear, the premise was that the people on the ship also knew Song Kaiyuan's identity. At this moment, Han Fei said bluntly, "They are from our allies. The 4 major immortal palaces of the Taishan heaven, the Sword Divine heaven, the Immeasurable heaven, and the Glass heaven. The 6 of them can be regarded as the top heavenly talents of each immortal palace. Each of them is not comparable to an ordinary demi-king. I won't introduce them too much. You can take your time in the future." Allies. Ignoring everyone's surprise, Han Fei said, "In the next 3 days, you can slowly get used to each other. 3 days later, be ready to fight with all your strength. The Avenger will officially become a major force in the chaotic vast sea in 3 days." In the cabin, Han Fei, Xia Shaochan, and the others gathered. Zhang Xuanyu said, "Fei, among these people, is there a suitable opponent for me to challenge?" Han Fei said, "You want to challenge? The burly man is named Li Kaitian. His defense and combat power are amazing, and he also uses a stick. However, you haven't even reached the peak stage of the Venerable Realm. Don't ask for trouble. When you reach the peak stage of the Venerable Realm, you can try again." Zhang Xuanyu couldn't help but ask, "So strong?" Han Fei said, "Among them, except for Mu Shi and Mushui Sisi, who don't have the ability to fight across realms, the other 4 can." "Fight across realms?" Lu Renkuang was surprised. "Aren't they only demi-kings? How can they fight across realms?" Luo Xiaobai asked, "You mean, they can exert the combat power of the Pioneer Sea realm?" Everyone couldn't help but be shocked. Damn, can the top heavenly talents in the outside world be so strong? Demi-kings can fight across realms? So exaggerated? It's not a complete breakthrough. However, they can pose a certain threat to the most ordinary demi-kings in a short period of time. Even so, they are not comparable to ordinary demi-kings. For example, Mu Shi, the weakest of the 6, can easily defeat a pseudo-king like the Black Killer Snail King. Wow, seeing their expressions, Xia Shaochan couldn't help but smile. Don't listen to his exaggeration. They are the top heavenly talents in their respective immortal palaces. If they don't have some strength, how can they be the best in a palace? However, you have cultivated the pure mystic body for so long, and your foundation is extremely solid. In the same realm, it's impossible for them to defeat you." Zhang Xuanyu licked the corner of his mouth and said, "There's still a long way to go. It's only been a year since our 5-year plan. 5 years later, I will challenge them again." 3 days later, the marauders dispatched 3 large ships in a row, 98 venerables, no explorers, and the 4 Mad Kings personally led them. A day after they left the martial Emperor city, the 4 Mad Kings lay on his main ship and shouted, "Brothers, this time, it is said that the Medicine King Heaven refined an 8th-grade divine pill, and many heroes have gathered. All the major immortal palaces were fighting for it with all their might. We can hunt any one of them, and we will be rich. Let's do our best. With my king here, we will definitely be able to tear off a few mouthfuls of flesh this time. Brothers, we have been waiting for a long time. Recently, the Avenger had been constantly sending out news, showing off its prowess. This time, it's our turn. The four mad kings slapped the air, causing the man to stagger. He cursed, "Don't mention Han Fei in front of me. You're spoiling my mood." However, a voice suddenly came. "How am I spoiling your mood when I'm not here? Seeing how you talk about him every day, I will feel sorry if I don't kill you today." All of a sudden, the four mad kings' expressions changed drastically. They leaped up from the ship and shouted, "Activate all ships!" Whoosh! As soon as the four mad kings' voice faded, huge waves appeared out of thin air, and a sword current filled with a variety of complex auras attacked. The four mad kings' speed could not be described as slow. The first thing he did was to stand in front of one of the ships, because Han Fei's first attack wasn't aimed at the main ship. Therefore, the four mad kings thought they could block the attack. However, when the four mad kings faced the sword head-on, they were dumbfounded. Roar! The four mad kings' faces turned green. Is this AF** king attack from Han Fei? Wherever the sword passed, the void collapsed. Behind it was a majestic sword intent that carried endless cracks in the void and the vast ocean sword intent. It was like a giant beast attacking. The four mad kings immediately went berserk, but they found that they were still no match. Immediately afterward, he fused with his spiritual beast and used a secret skill. His strength soared again. However, he found that he was still no match. This was the strongest state he could reach in a short period of time. However, in the face of Han Fei's sword, apart from shock, there was also fear in his heart. At the last moment, the four mad kings dodged. Because the sword wasn't aimed at him at all, he had time to escape. However, one of the marauders couldn't. Although the formation of ships lit up, how could the formation of ships withstand a sword that even the four mad kings couldn't block? Crack, crack, crack. Crisp sounds came one after another. Bang! In the blink of an eye, a large ship was crushed into dust and debris. A total of 37 venerables on the ship were all killed. None of them survived. This was the horror of a king. Not to mention the marauders, all the crew members on the Avenger were dumbfounded by Han Fei's slash. The most shocked one was Sword Regret. What kind of sword intent did Han Fei comprehend? How could it be so powerful? Killing 37 venerables with one sword strike? Even if he was a king, how could he do it so easily? More importantly, there were at least 3 half-king realm powerhouses on that ship. Song Kaiyuan took a deep breath. Even he didn't know Han Fei's sword strike. After 10 years, Han Fei had become a king. But this king was too strong, wasn't it? Even Zhang Xuanyu and the others were confused, and they all swallowed their saliva. A big ship was taken care of with just one sword? This made their pursuit of power become limitless. It was not until then that the others realized that Han Fei had only been accompanying them to train in the past year. Otherwise, Han Fei would have killed the marauders with 3 sword strikes. It had nothing to do with them. Han Fei said, "Kill them." Swish, swish, swish. As soon as Han Fei shouted, everyone on the ship turned into streams of light and rushed out. Han Fei's eyebrows flashed, and the 9-tailed mantis shrimp, Little Gold, Little Fatty, and Simp all joined the battle. Even so, the strength of Han Fei's side was still a little weaker than that of the marauders. It wasn't that the strength of the strong was weak, but that there were too many low-end combatants on the Avenger. Fortunately, the lowest-end combatants were from the Thug Academy. And these people from the Thug Academy had cultivated the pure mystic body to such a level. Therefore, their true strength couldn't be judged according to ordinary realms. Han Fei's figure descended and crushed 2 of the ships with his 2 feet, forcing the marauders to fight the Avenger for real. And in an instant, a junior venerable tried to attack the team where Yi Xian and the others were. After all, the 5 of them were the weakest. As a result, the moment the 5 of them fused with their spiritual beasts, their strength soared a little. The venerable slashed back Yi Xian and Su Daiji, but unexpectedly, his legs were entangled by seaweed. Immediately following that, a deadly sword light erupted with the power of a venerable and stabbed straight at the back of his heart. It was Chu Jinan and Ling Yuan. They weren't much stronger than Su Sanxian and the others, so it was most appropriate for them to help at this moment. Immediately afterward, thousands of spider threads floated in the air, and an array even appeared under his feet. There were 7 sword shadows in front of him, one after another exploding towards him. Bam! 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 After taking 2 strikes head-on, the man no longer had a chance to escape. At this moment, he realized that he was surrounded by 7 people. Among the 7 of them, there were 2 manipulators and a spirit gatherer who were frantically exerting control on him. The others frequently used killing moves, and their strength was extraordinary. Every strike could severely injure him. The man was shocked. What kind of freaks are they? Chapter 1900. The Avengers' surprise attack started with Han Fei's Dao Convergence, which caught the Ravagers off guard. The Mad 4 Kings roared, and their skin turned red. He shouted, "Han Fei boy, do you think I'm ranked 4th among the top 10 pirate groups just because I can go berserk?" The Mad 4 Kings' momentum soared crazily. Han Fei saw that his flesh and blood were broken, many bone spurs appeared on his body, and horns grew out of his head. The old turtle said, "This guy is possessed. Furthermore, he's a devil who has taken a crooked path, not a orthodox great devil." Han Fei frowned slightly. The Mad 4 Kings had gone berserk twice, but their strength was still not as good as one of his clones. But this time, this guy had transformed into a monster that looked like a lizard man. The soaring blood and chi obviously came at the cost of his vitality. However, Han Fei wasn't scared at all. Han Fei chuckled. "That's good. If you're too weak, it'll be boring. I haven't really fought for 11 years. I don't know how strong I am now. You can try it." Han Fei smiled. He tapped his foot and appeared dozens of kilometers in front of the Mad 4 Kings. 2 more arms grew out of the Mad 4 King's body at this moment. He grabbed 4 knives and cut 4 cracks in the void, trying to suck Han Fei in. Hee, Han Fei's figure flashed, and the void around him was torn apart. The 2 of them fell into the void in an instant. Seeing this scene, Xia Shaochan cut off one person with a knife and began to support the formation. After all, the people on the Avenger were still growing. Now they didn't have much time to grow, and this battle would be very difficult. Han Fei was not here, so she had to take charge. Although Han Fei said there was a chance of death, these people were all carefully selected by him. No matter who was lost, it would be regrettable. After all, Han Fei had only brought these few people. But fortunately, some of them were escaping. Song Kaiyuan and the others also attracted a lot of firepower, which could relieve some pressure on the Avenger. In the void, Han Fei held the 2 sea-quelling bizarre treasures of the Mad 4 Kings with both hands. In Han Fei's hands, light flowed, and a terrifying force burst out at close range. Pung pung. After Han Fei crushed the 2 beginner sea-quelling bizarre treasures with his bare hands, he said in disdain, "It seems that you have a lot of vitality. Continue to be crazy. I want to see how crazy you can get." At this moment, the 4 Mad Kings were truly a little deranged. He knew that he probably wouldn't be able to escape today. Secondly, he guessed that Han Fei had also used some kind of secret method. For example, when he met Han Fei for the first time, Han Fei's peak combat power could only last about 10 seconds. The 2 of them exchanged 1,000 blows in an instant. All of a sudden, a black beam of light burst out from the 4 Mad Kings' chest and pierced Han Fei's chest with lightning speed. Bang! Han Fei was pushed back 100 kilometers, and the battle suit on his chest was completely torn. However, the 4 Mad Kings saw a golden glow on Han Fei's flesh. His attack was actually unable to shake this guy's physical body? Han Fei smiled. "You don't know what the heart of invincibility is. Otherwise, you would never have chosen to attack me. Do you have any more moves?" Han Fei, boy, I don't believe that you can stay strong with your own strength. The four Mad Kings abandoned the two sabers and tried to fight Han Fei in close combat. He estimated that Han Fei had been fighting for 7 or 8 seconds now. If Han Fei used a secret method, he would definitely be weakened. At that time, the four Mad Kings might seize the opportunity to kill Han Fei the moment he activated the time spell. However, Han Fei was not afraid at all. He directly collided with the four Mad Kings. Dong dong dong, clang clang clang. Crack crack crack. Han Fei estimated that the four Mad Kings were burning their lives and forcibly going into demonization at this moment, and the power they released was about 220,000 to 240,000 wave. However, this kind of explosion was too harmful to the body. If it wasn't a life-and-death situation, the four Mad Kings wouldn't fight in this way without considering the consequences. Therefore, under normal circumstances, the four Mad Kings' strongest state could only reach 120,000 wave. But all in all, Han Fei had truly witnessed the true strength of the fourth pirate crew. If the four Mad Kings had such a trump card, then the top 3 must have a trump card. Han Fei thought for a while. If he wanted to become one of the strongest forces in the chaotic vast sea, he might need some time. 5 seconds later, the four Mad Kings were still erupting. However, Han Fei was no longer interested. His combat power had surpassed them in all aspects. There was no need to use the four Mad Kings as a standard to measure himself. Han Fei said, "It's over. The famous four Mad Kings are nothing more than this." The four Mad Kings clearly felt the change in Han Fei and wanted to retreat. However, all of a sudden, he found that the power that Han Fei burst out had more than doubled. How could the four Mad Kings expect such an extreme increase in power? With just one strike, the four Mad Kings' fists exploded. And Han Fei's combat speed and explosive frequency were not inferior to the four Mad Kings. Bang bang bang. In less than half a breath, the four Mad Kings didn't even have time to escape and were directly crushed into a meat patty. Feeling that the broken body of the four Mad Kings was overflowing with energy, Han Fei knew that they were going to explode. Han Fei sneered. The void lines turned into one, which directly grabbed the four Mad Kings and hit their souls. In just one strike, a terrible power broke out in the void. Above the sky, a huge blood-colored crack stretched across the sky. Outside, when the crew of the Avenger saw this scene, their morale skyrocketed, and they became more and more courageous. Someone shouted, "Captain, kill the kings! Everyone, try harder and kill all the marauders." In the previous battles, the crew of the Avenger always kept a trump card. However, this time, in order to win, most of them played their trump cards. It was not because they didn't need to keep it, but because it was time to explode. The marauders were not good-for-nothings. How could they be so easy to defeat? A vine drilled out of the void, and 2 people were tied to it. All that was left of these 2 people was a mutilated body. These were the crew members of the Avenger, who had fought until the very end and nearly killed themselves. Even half of Chu Linyuan's body was cut off. Dozens of big holes were poked in Mu Qingchuan's body. Wang Dashuai's bronze door was directly bent, and it was covered with cracks. Except for the half-king warriors, the rest of the Avenger were all injured. Thanks to Xia Shaochan and the Void Vine, the rest of the Avenger were all injured. Otherwise, the Avenger would have suffered at least 20 casualties this time. For these venerables of the Marauders, this battle was destined to be unfair. Because there were too many half-king warriors on the Avenger's side. Every time they were about to kill someone from the Avenger, an expert would suddenly descend and snatch that person away. Who the hell was he supposed to complain to? After all, their king warriors might be dead. At this moment, there were only 35 venerables left on the Marauder's side, and the others had been blown up. All of a sudden, the void trembled, and Han Fei casually walked out of it. Han Fei glanced at the battle and said lightly, "This battle is over. These people have survived until now. Let them go." On the Avenger, many people sighed in their hearts. Unfortunately, they weren't strong enough to defeat their opponents quickly. The Marauders, on the other hand, were dumbfounded. They were let go just like that? Is this for real? Aren't you going to fight to the death? Han Fei said, remember to spread the news when you go back. From now on, there will be no more marauders in this chaotic vast sea. The Avenger, ranked 4th among the top 10 pirate groups, will be gone. On the Marauders' side, someone heard the voice and fled far away, not daring to stay at all. The others, after finding that Han Fei didn't stop this person from leaving, basically ran away as fast as they could. However, a few people, to Han Fei's surprise, didn't leave. A half-king warrior directly surrendered. Greetings, King Han. My name is Xuening, and I sincerely surrender. If King Han doesn't abandon me, I'm willing to join the Avenger. Oh! Han Fei couldn't help but smile. If you want to surrender, how can I believe you? Xuening said, I, Xuening, can swear to the Tao that if I am not sincere, I will never make a breakthrough in this life. Han Fei couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. That's not a small oath. Han Fei raised his eyebrows and said, then make an oath. Xuening was overjoyed, and the people on the Avenger all looked at Han Fei, wondering, what does King Han mean? Is he starting to recruit people from the outside world? Xuening shouted, I, Xuening, sincerely surrender and will follow the Avenger for the rest of my life, Lord Han. If I break this oath, my heart will be clouded, I will be abandoned by both men and gods, and I will be punished by the heavens. This Xuening was really straightforward. She swore as soon as she said she'd do it. Together with Xuening, there was another half-king named Su Can, who also intended to surrender. Han Fei smiled. Tell me, why are you willing to follow me? Xuening said, 10 years ago, Lord Han fought against the Emperor and survived. 10 years later, his strength is unfathomable. It can be seen that Lord Han is destined to follow me. I know that Lord Han will not be a pirate forever. Xuening swears that she will follow Lord Han to fight against the strong. Su Can clasped his fists. Su can also sincerely surrender and can also make an oath. Han Fei pondered for a moment. The surrender of Xuening and Su Can made Han Fei wonder why he couldn't strengthen the Avenger while cultivating his own people. Besides, the newcomers were also half-kings. It would be a waste if he didn't accept them. Han Fei nodded slightly and said, in that case, I don't mind accepting you too. But as for the specific good fortune in the future, it still depends on your performance. Chapter 1901. Xuening and Su Can, of course, couldn't enter the main ship. The meaning of the main ship was different. On the main ship were people from the Yinyang heaven and the Waterwood heaven. To put it bluntly, they were all on the same side, so they were the most trustworthy. Even though Xuening and Su Can had made a great Tao oath, who knew how many great Taos they had? Han Fei himself made a great Tao oath casually, so it didn't matter at all. To create a second Avenger, Han Fei just needed to pick one from his origin sea. His origin sea had developed into a world that was half land and half sea. Here there were sky, mountains, rivers, seas, forests, and orchards. The only thing missing might be the sun and the moon. Han Fei was not in a hurry. He could now send as much chaotic energy into the origin sea as possible. In fact, the crazy four kings miscalculated one thing, which was Han Fei's origin sea. If it were in the past, Han Fei could only hold on for about 10 minutes or even less in a high-intensity battle. However, things were different now. Han Fei's origin sea was huge. After hundreds of years of development, Han Fei didn't expand it, but studied with the old turtle how to make his origin sea more like a real world. Therefore, when Xia Shaochan and the others entered Han Fei's origin sea, they were also very surprised. It turned out that this was the so-called sea expansion of the Pioneer Sea realm. The origin sea could accommodate people. This was something that had already been confirmed. In addition to accommodating people, the more real this world was, the more likely it was to breed the great Tao. And this was the fundamental reason why Han Fei could maintain his current state. At this moment, Han Fei calmed his mind in the Origin Sea, piling up the ultra-quality spiritual stones he plundered from the crazy Four Kings into his own ultra-quality spiritual stone mountain, injecting the earth vein spring water into the earth vein of his Origin Sea, pouring the spiritual spring water into the spiritual vein that he had opened up, planting spiritual fruits and other species into the spiritual orchard. Yes, Han Fei's robberies were no longer just for consumption. Now, Han Fei had basically made arrangements for all the renewable and nurturing resources he had plundered. The crazy Four Kings were worth tens of millions, which greatly satisfied Han Fei's demand for resources. As for the demon purification pot, after absorbing the Origin Sea of the crazy Four Kings, Han Fei found that his Origin Sea was already very solid and seemed to be developing further. Han Fei looked back at his own information, only to see it popping up in front of his eyes. Owner Han Fei level 90 Sea expansion, family tree in the vast sea, 980006 chaotic energy, 9896 wisps mind power, 588869 range, 600,000 kilometers power, 166,806 waves, first spiritual pulse, unknown a second spiritual vein, unknown first spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 82, second spiritual beast, king sparrow, level 87, main art, void arrival, level 7 of void fishing, king level, divine quality. During the 10 years in the yin-yang sky, Han Fei swallowed the blue dragon bloodline and finally became one of the top 1 million creatures in the Sea Clan. However, Han Fei found that the higher he went, the harder it was to find a higher-level bloodline. As for his own family, he couldn't use any of these visible bloodlines. Therefore, the matter of bloodline devouring was put aside for the time being. As for the chaotic energy, Han Fei didn't focus on it in recent years. In the past year, he hunted 2 kings in a row. The demon purification pot actively swallowed their Origin Seas, which was why it had such rapid growth. However, the demon purification pot couldn't swallow other people's Origin Seas. Otherwise, he wouldn't have so much chaotic energy. At this moment, Han Fei was only here to take a look at the chaotic energy. If hunting a king only increased his chaotic energy by more than 2,000 wisps, then the growth of the chaotic energy was too slow. Han Fei complained to the old turtle about this problem and almost infuriated the old turtle. The old turtle said that Han Fei didn't know how lucky he was. Now, looking at his various data, Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. The crazy Four Kings are already so terrifying when they go all out. If I were to face that person from the Immortal Pirate team, I wonder what my chances of winning are? The old turtle said, "Your current strength is not weak at all. Even if your peak combat ability is not among the top 10 in the Chaotic Sea Clan, it should be among the top 30. What you need now is to study your Tao." Han Fei nodded slightly. That's true. The Green Jade Stone Bridge is getting more and more difficult to walk now. If it goes on like this, it will go downhill. This time, there was another important reason why Han Fei left the Yin-Yang Heaven. He found that his combat power, which could have been increased by 3 times, seemed to be declining. The degree of decline was about from 3 times to 8 times. Han Fei soon understood the reason for the decline. That was because his understanding of the Tao itself was not enough. As his strength increased, the increase provided by his Tao became less and less, unless he could understand his Tao more deeply. However, this kind of thing couldn't be figured out just by thinking about it. Therefore, an important purpose of Han Fei's trip this time was to try to understand his Tao more deeply in the Chaotic Sea Clan. While Han Fei was silent, most of the people had begun to chat spontaneously. As many as 20 were seriously injured, and most of the resources were used to rebuild their bodies. Han Fei came back to himself and didn't immediately heal them. Instead, he asked, have you seen it? This was the power of the marauders. Even if only part of the middle level is left for you to fight, it will be difficult for you to kill them. This represents the gap. This means that you haven't robbed enough resources, which means that you are not strong enough. In the next 6 months, you don't have to do anything but continue to train. On the other side, Xuening and Su can seem to be trying to make their presence known. Xuening said, King Han, there is a big event in the Medicine King Heaven this time. It is said that old Lady Chiu refined an 8th grade divine pill. This time, many people from the 36 Black Heavens are going to the Medicine King Heaven to compete for treasures. We can go there and do something. An 8th grade divine pill? Han Fei wasn't surprised, but the other people on the Avenger were dumbfounded. What is an 8th grade divine pill? Many people looked at Han Fei, but Han Fei had never eaten an 8th grade divine pill. How could he explain it? In any case, it must be something good. However, the better something was, the hotter it was. Not just anyone could take it down. Han Fei said, don't think too much. You can think about all this nonsense when you become half monarch. Now, the 5-year sharpening plan continues. Han Fei's words dispelled everyone's expectations, and Han Fei secretly said to Xia Shaochan and the others via voice transmission, this time, you go to the Medicine King Heaven to train, and I will go with the girl. Zhang Xuanyu asked, you won't take us with you? Han Fei asked, are you half a king? Zhang Xuanyu. Han Fei had long known the news that the Medicine King Heaven refined an 8th grade divine pill. Besides, Song Kaiyuan and the others had also told Han Fei. However, Han Fei knew that a large number of strong masters from the major immortal palaces would come. If he were to bump into some bad luck, he would not be able to escape if he were to say something impolite. Although Han Fei's current peak combat power was indeed unbelievably strong. However, he couldn't underestimate the strong masters cultivated in the chaotic ocean sea for tens of thousands of years. Not long after Han Fei killed the 4 crazy kings, there were movements of kings everywhere in the chaotic ocean sea. Another king died? This was the second time that a king had died in the chaotic ocean sea this year. On the next day, new news came out of the Martial Emperor City. It was said that the marauders had become a thing of the past. The Avengers had been promoted to the top 10 pirate groups and ranked 4th. As soon as this news came out, the personnel of the major forces stationed in the Martial Emperor City were in an uproar. They could never have imagined that Han Fei's first target was the marauders. All of a sudden, he pushed himself to 4th. For a time, all kinds of intelligence were sent back. Within half a month, the entire chaotic Azure Sea was bewildered. Was the Avengers really this strong? Also, Han Fei's strength was a complete mystery. There was a reason why the marauders could rank 4th among the top 10 pirate group. Being in this position meant that they had the strength. But now, they were taken by Han Fei. This meant that Han Fei's strength far exceeded that of the 4 crazy kings. In the end, the basic conclusion of the Martial Emperor City was that Han Fei had undoubtedly become a king, and his combat power was directly ranked 39th on the sea expansion list in the chaotic ocean sea. This position originally belonged to the 4 crazy kings, but now it was Han Fei's turn. Half a month later, tens of millions of kilometers away from the Medicine King Heaven, Han Fei said, today, I will allow you to enter my origin sea to cultivate. But remember, after entering my origin sea, you need to bring your own resources. Whenever you're done with your cultivation resources, you can borrow them from me. But in the end, you have to pay back. Do you understand? Enter the origin sea? Everyone couldn't help but gasp. Luo Xiaobai and Xia Shaochan looked at Han Fei in surprise. Xia Shaochan asked, are you going to expose the origin sea to them? Luo Xiaobai asked, didn't you say that the origin sea can't be easily exposed? Han Fei smiled and said, I will set up a barrier so that they can't see through my origin sea. In the future, they will be the strongest force of the Yin Yang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven. and the Medicine King Heaven has gathered many strong masters recently. So, no matter where you go, you will not be safe. You can only come to my origin sea. Chapter 1902. Unlike others, Han Fei's origin sea carried a large amount of luck of the Great Path. Even if all the people who went in added up, how could they shake it? It would be difficult for them to achieve great things. Han Fei considered one thing. Should he expose his power of time acceleration? The Time Dragon Carp once said that the Great Path of Time was different from other great paths. This great path involved the River of Time and might be noticed by the Temple of Time. The old turtle also said that once time acceleration exceeded 10 times, it would be a forbidden technique, and the Temple of Time would not allow it. Han Fei pondered for a long time and thought, I can make a small bet. Xuening and Su Ran naturally didn't have such an opportunity, and Han Fei wouldn't allow these outsiders to enter his origin sea. Han Fei naturally trusted the people from the Thug Academy. As for the others, it was hard to say. He didn't have absolute faith in them yet. Therefore, Han Fei directly reduced the time acceleration to 5 times. Compared with the time acceleration of 10 times, 5 times could be said to be extraordinary. 1 day of cultivation here was equivalent to 5 days of cultivation in the outside world. After all, it was much better than 1 day of cultivation here, right? Han Fei adjusted the level of time acceleration but didn't tell these people. The origin sea could accelerate time. There was no need for him to tell them such a private thing. If he told them, in addition to showing off, it would probably arouse everyone's speculation and curiosity. Han Fei said, "This cultivation will last half a year to a year. You've been fighting for a year and you need to cultivate in seclusion for a while. I'll give you this opportunity. When you come out, don't be at this level." Han Fei didn't care about his oppressive cultivation method. These people were all heavenly talent. Whether it was comprehension or resource utilization efficiency, they were extremely high. They had their own determination, and what Han Fei wanted was to make them stronger, and stronger as soon as possible. On the Thug Academy side, Chu Jinan and Ling Yuan said, "We have been in the semi-venerable realm for a long time. It's time to make a breakthrough." Luo Xiaobai nodded. "It's okay to make a breakthrough here. Your senior brother still has this bit of resources. By the way, don't tell anyone about time." Chu Jinan, Xing Yu, and the others nodded. Of course, they wouldn't be stupid enough to tell the secret of Han Fei's origin sea. In fact, there was no concept of time here. The people who came in wouldn't notice. Even if they found some clues one day, could they still come and ask? In the outside world, Xuening and Su Ran were not absorbed into Forge the Universe by Han Fei. Neither did Song Kaiyuan's group of 6. Han Fei looked at Song Kaiyuan and said, "You said that you have a suitable identity for me to sneak into the Medicine King Dome. What identity is it? If it's just an ordinary identity, it's useless to me." Song Kaiyuan said, "Of course I know. Although the deceiving God precious technique can imitate anyone's identity, but as for who he was going to disguise as, his identity was the key. As far as I know, the Medicine King Sky has refined a total of 7 grade 8 divine pills this time. Without sufficient status, it was almost impossible to come into contact with divine pills. It was said that 5 divine pills would be sold to the public this time. You can imagine the intensity of the competition." Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "What identity can you provide me?" At this moment, Jian Hui, who had been silent all this while, suddenly said, "My junior martial uncle, Wang Yijian. This person fell into diabolism 6,000 years ago and betrayed the Sword God Palace. We told the outside world that junior martial uncle had been in seclusion for many years, but in fact, he was killed by the Sword God and his body is still buried under the Sword Pool." Han Fei couldn't help narrowing his eyes. "You're telling me such important information?" Song Kaiyuan said, "Captain, I think at this time, the Yinyang Heaven, our Grand Mystery Palace, and the Sword God Palace should be confirmed allies. Jian Hui said, "The death of junior marshal Uncle Jian has long been suspected by the outside world. Back then, he fell into diabolism because he wanted to open a sword palace. Now that things have come to this, why don't we use the identity of junior marshal uncle while we can still use it?" Han Fei asked, "Open a sword palace?" Jian Hui said, "Similar to opening the sky." Han Fei understood. The reason why he could use this identity was that this Wang Yijian really needed these 8th grade divine pills, and he was determined to get them. In this way, Wang Yijian could openly compete for these 8th grade divine pills. Han Fei said with a smile, "You seem to be well prepared." Song Kaiyuan said with a smile, "Captain, after the Medicine King Heaven incident, in fact, even if you don't use this identity, our 4 palaces will arrange for someone else to use this identity to compete for the divine pills." Han Fei was speechless. "Do you think you can earn it?" Song Kaiyuan said, "If we fight for it openly, with the strength of our 4 palaces, we should be able to get one." Han Fei thought, if we compete for it in terms of financial resources, it seems possible. But aren't you too naive? Last time, the Sword God helped me. Why would anyone be willing to give face to the Sword God Palace? Besides, neither Song Kaiyuan nor Jian Hui understood Han Fei's personality. Was he the kind of person who would compete with others openly? A 6th grade soul pill could be sold for a sky-high price of 5 million. A 7th grade Tao pattern pill was said to be priceless and no one would sell it at all. Who knew how expensive an 8th grade pill would be? Anyway, Han Fei would never pay a penny for it. However, the identity of Wang Yijian could be used. Han Fei said, "Okay, I'll use this identity." Jian Hui handed out a jade slip and said lightly, "This is Senior Uncle Yijian's past information." Han Fei nodded slightly. Jian Hui and the others also disappeared in front of Han Fei and were taken into his origin sea. Han Fei immersed his mind in the jade slip, and after scanning it, he couldn't help but be shocked by this Wang Yijian. This guy was a genius. He became a king at the age of 802, failed to open a sword palace at the age of 3002, broke his sword and became obsessed, and was killed by the sword god under the sword comprehension platform. This person was a maverick, had no friends in his life, and traveled on non-sea routes all year round. He once opened 3 sea routes for the Sword God Palace alone. He had fought countless living beings, but almost none of them could block the might of his sword. This character was a perfect fit for him. The only thing that puzzled Han Fei was that this character prepared by the Sword God Palace was too suitable for him. He created the Tao Convergence sword and once played Shuizhan, so he was extremely aloof. His current peak strength was strong enough to be listed in the top dozens of pioneer sea realm cultivators in the chaotic ocean. Wasn't all this too coincidental? Han Fei subconsciously tested it with the 9-palace destiny ruler and found that it was a peace hexagram, so he was slightly relieved. No matter what, from today on, he had to test the 9-palace destiny ruler every day. It was better to be safe than sorry. 10 days later, Han Fei used the king's great bone and the fragment of the sea-quelling bizarre treasure he snatched from the crazy 4 kings to forge a red long sword. The extraordinary thing about this sword was that it was composed of 49 pieces of the sword. There was still some distance between the pieces, and it looked like a broken sword. But this thing still maintained the shape of a sword, standing behind Han Fei. Under the surprised gaze of Xuening and Su Ran, Han Fei's body became slender and lean. Han Fei's hair grew longer and turned pure white. Han Fei's face looked very gloomy, and his eyes were full of indifference and death. As for his clothes, Han Fei took out a pure black robe. This change in appearance made people know at first glance that this person was extraordinary, and they didn't dare to offend him at all. At this time, there was less than half a month before the 8th grade divine pill was formed. Almost all the people who were supposed to come from the major immortal palaces had arrived. Because in addition to the 8th grade divine pill, there would also be a grand spiritual pill festival. At that time, a large number of 5th grade and 6th grade tribulation pills would be auctioned off. In fact, these 5th grade and 6th grade tribulation pills were the main reason why so many people had come. The Medicine King's Valley of the Medicine King stretched among the mountains. At this moment, at the entrance of the Medicine King Palace, there was an endless stream of cultivators coming and going. The Medicine King Palace was full of people who refined medicine. Therefore, the area of the city was extremely small. Moreover, the mountain range was suitable for the growth of all kinds of large medicine field. In the Medicine King Palace, spirit gatherers were the most abundant, and spirit gatherers could cultivate medicine fields very well. It was for this reason that the Medicine King Palace actually had a lot of strong cultivators. Even the strong cultivators who came from medicine were no less than any of the other immortal palaces. In terms of numbers, they could even rival the Grand Pure and Wuji. In the past few days, countless people had entered the Medicine King Palace. But not many could enter the Medicine King Palace. At this moment, hundreds of thousands of kilometers away from the Medicine King Palace, Xia Xiaochan was still muttering, "I'm still not used to. You made yourself like this. But I have to say, this is really cool. I can even compare with Zhang Xuanyu." Han Fei said with a black face, "Be serious. Right now, you are my personal sword attendant. Hold onto your sword properly." Xia Xiaochan asked, "Behind you, there is clearly a sword floating. Why do I have to hold 3? Han Fei said, "What you are holding is not a sword, but money." Han Fei said, "The people of Investiture Heaven haven't shown up yet. I think they probably won't come to participate in this Medicine King Palace festival. Let's go." As for Xuanning and Su Ran, Han Fei didn't take them with him. They were left thousands of kilometers away. They could run or wait. This was a test from Han Fei. Xia Xiaochan asked, "Aren't you afraid that someone will recognize me? Once I'm exposed, you won't be able to hide your identity." Han Fei grinned. "I don't think anyone would think that the former princess of the mermaid royal family would turn into a village girl, right? I'll bite you to death. Who are you calling a village girl? I'll bite you to death, believe it or not." Han Fei. Chapter 1903. Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan went to the Medicine King Valley noisily. However, this time, Han Fei didn't take Xia Xiaochan out to spend some alone time. Instead, Han Fei really wanted to lure the people of Investiture Heaven out. Investiture Heaven, as a special divine palace, Han Fei felt that this divine palace had been devoured by the power of the infamily. It could be seen from the last trip to the land of the King Grave that the many experts of Investiture Heaven were just trying to kill Xia Xiaochan. Han Fei couldn't help but wonder why they were so obsessed with killing Xia Xiaochan. Even if the infamily was a terrifying force, there was no need to arrange so many people from hundreds of millions of kilometers away. They would rather sacrifice countless experts to kill Xia Xiaochan, right? Han Fei also wanted to buy this intelligence when he was in the Martial Emperor City. However, he couldn't afford the price at all. So, he wasn't in a hurry to spend money. If the experts of Investiture Heaven were willing to die, Han Fei wouldn't mind taking a batch of them. He could also bait Chun Huangyan to see if this person would come to the Medicine King Valley's grand ceremony to find the princess. After a moment, at the gate of the Medicine King Valley, there were experts in the Pioneer Sea State and 8.5 kings guarding here to verify the identity, strength, and resources of the visitors. Not everyone could participate in the Medicine King Valley's grand ceremony. On this trip, the ones who would come would be people with status in the 36 profound heavens. There would almost be no low-level people appearing. At this moment, at the gate of the Medicine King Valley, some people were being inspected. From hundreds of thousands of kilometers away, Han Fei saw an expert in the Pioneer Sea State arriving at the gate. That person just paused for a moment, then went straight into the valley. Those who weren't kings had to be inspected honestly to confirm their identity. Only then could they enter the valley. Therefore, in front of the Medicine King Valley, many people actually didn't enter immediately. After all, it took time to verify their assets, arrange to use the great techniques of their respective divine palaces, and answer some questions. The people of the Medicine King Valley didn't find it troublesome and insisted on checking them one by one. Han Fei said to Xia Shaochan, "Ignore them. Let's go straight through." Han Fei had this confidence. Wang Yijian of the Sword God Palace was once a peerless heavenly talent. At least, his strength was enough to pass through the gate of the Medicine King Valley. Valley of the Medicine Master's Mountain Gate. A middle-aged king sat cross-legged on a green stone platform next to the mountain gate. At this moment, two women bowed to the middle-aged man. Fan Yintian, Gu Yuin and Gu Yul greet the Zhong King. It was an expert from Fan Yin Heaven. Among the people waiting, someone said, "It's these two?" It was said that he had obtained a great opportunity in the land where the king perished. It is said that their strength has skyrocketed. However, Gu Yuin and Gu Yul waited for a long time but did not get a response. Immediately, a demi-king from the Herb Kingdom smiled and said, "Please come with me. I will need the two of you to verify your resources and confirm that you have the financial resources to participate in this event." Gu Yuin and Gu Yul's expressions changed slightly. "We are such recognizable people, and he wants to pretend not to see us?" The two of them could not help but frown. The Medicine King Heaven rose to prominence through medicine, but now it had reached the point where it considered everyone beneath it? However, Brahma Sound Heaven was an immortal palace in the outer sea region after all. Gu Yuin and Gu Yul had no choice but to go and verify their qualifications. Suddenly, they heard someone say, "Look, that person from the Great Pure Palace is here." Everyone turned their heads and saw Partner Wu walking up the stairs. Behind him were 7 or 8 demi-kings and 5 or 6 peak supremacies from the Great Pure Palace. The reason why Partner Wu was leading the group was because a monarch from the Great Pure Palace had long entered. Indeed, how could famous monarchs be willing to walk through the mountain gates with a bunch of half-monarch juniors? Many people were surprised. An elite from the Great Pure Palace is also here to vie for pills? Someone said, "There's naturally no chance of obtaining a grade 8 divine pill, but a grade 7 divine pill is still possible." Not long after Partner Wu arrived, he saw Wu Hao from the Chaos Heavens, Li Xinghen and Beitang Xian from the Limitless Heaven. Li Xinghen looked at Partner Wu. "Brother Wu, you came early." Partner Wu said languidly, "It has to be early. We can't let you beat us to it, right?" Li Xinghen smiled gloomily. "What are you saying? The Great Pure Palace and Limitless Palace are not separated. Brother Wu, you are treating me like an outsider." Partner Wu said frankly, "It's not separated, but the path to invincibility is determined by life and death. I hope Brother Li can obtain the divine pill this time. Otherwise, it would be a pity." The moment these two appeared, they were at loggerheads, neither giving way to the other. Of course, the premise was that there was no opponent worthy of their attention here. Even if there was Wu Hao, in their opinion, Wu Hao's strength was not enough to contend with them. When Partner Wu and the others came up, they immediately cupped their fists at that person. "Partner Wu, Great Pure Palace." Partner Wu greets Uncle Zhong. Li Xinghen, Limitless Palace. Li Xinghen greets Senior Zhong. Wu Hao, Chaotic Heavens. Wu Hao greets King Zhong. Enter. That middle-aged man did not even open his eyes. He entered as he said, "This Zhong Yu was also a sensible person." He scanned them with his perception, and after confirming that there were no problems, he let them in. After all, they were the top 3 elites of the immortal palaces. If he really blocked them outside, it would only attract unnecessary trouble. And in front of them, the 2 sisters, Gu Yuin and Gu Yul, couldn't help but frown, thinking, just because the immortal palaces are different, the difference in treatment is so great? But Partner Wu turned his head and couldn't help but smile faintly. "I seem to have some impression of these two. Brother Li, who are they again?" Li Xinghan tilted his head and took a look. I don't know. Partner Wu shrugged slightly. I might have remembered wrongly. But Wu Hao couldn't stand it anymore. They were, after all, Brahma Heaven's elites of this generation. Did they have the right to belittle them like this? Wu Hao said, You two have gone a little too far. Partner Wu tilted his head and took a look at Wu Hao, a disdainful sound coming from his throat. At this moment, the crowd suddenly felt King Zhongyu, who was sitting cross-legged beside them, attack the sky. Zhongyu then said in a low voice, You want to enter just because you say so? Do you think there is no one in the Medicine King Heaven? Many people looked at the sky and couldn't help but reveal surprised expressions. Who the hell is this? How dare he be so arrogant? He crossed the void in front of a king and tried to enter the Medicine King Heaven directly? When the two figures appeared 100 meters high in the sky, Han Fei's face was already dark. Damn it, is there something wrong with your eyesight or something? Do I look like an ordinary person? Is the Medicine King Heaven too arrogant? How dare you stop the second sword god of the Sword God Palace? Most importantly, Han Fei had to come out. If he didn't come out, it would be considered a forceful intrusion, which would only attract more attention. When Han Fei's figure appeared, countless people looked up. However, after a glance, they found that they didn't know this person at all. However, although they didn't know this person, the sword floating behind him was too conspicuous, the Sword of Shattering. In addition to that strange sword, that head of white hair, and the temperament of an unsheathed sword, there were only two places in the chaotic ocean that could give birth to such a person. One was the Grand Purity Palace. The other was the Sword God Palace. This person was obviously not from the Grand Purity Palace. The experts of the Grand Purity Palace didn't have such a person. In fact, it could be seen from Partner Wu's frown. Then, it could only mean one thing. This person was from the Sword God Palace. No one could see through this person's strength at all. Many people immediately realized that this person was undoubtedly a Sea Expansion Realm expert. But Partner Wu snorted. Not all Sea Expansion Realm experts can directly enter the Medicine King Heaven. The Grand Purity Palace and the Sword God Palace were enemies, so there was nothing to hide. Partner Wu was not afraid that he would be attacked by this person. If this person dared to attack him outside, he would be punished by the Grand Purity Palace. This was a small provocation to make Han Fei lose face, so that Han Fei would make a move against him in the future. In this way, he would be able to lure the experts of the Sky Purity Palace to kill Han Fei, and it could be considered as weakening the strength of the Sword God's Palace. This was the logic of the strong. They could see very far. A small action could be very meaningful. However, Partner Wu obviously didn't know Han Fei's temper and underestimated Han Fei's strength. Pooh! Han Fei only glanced at him, and Partner Wu vomited blood. He instantly protected himself with the invincible awareness. But even so, he still felt his heart palpitate. Partner Wu was shocked. He didn't expect that Han Fei would openly attack him in this situation. This was just a glance. If Han Fei stared at him a few more times, he would probably lose half of his life. However, Zhongyu suddenly waved his hand, and the power of the Great Path rose from the ground, trying to disperse Han Fei's power. However, Han Fei felt that he had been humiliated. How could he let this person go so easily? Han Fei suddenly released his aura, and the will of the Great Path turned into infinite sword intent, instantly cutting off Zhongyu's Great Path. Pooh! That Zhongyu wasn't any better than Wu Shou. He vomited a mouthful of blood on the spot. He stood rooted to the ground, not even having the chance to move. However, feeling the perception from the depths of the Medicine King Valley, Han Fei restrained his power. Han Fei said softly, "How dare you stop me?" At that moment, Zhongyu felt terrible. Who the hell is this? How dare you be so arrogant in my territory? However, at this moment, a voice came from the depths of the Medicine King Valley. A woman's voice said, "Mr. One Sword, why bother with the juniors? They are just following orders. Han Fei felt the power of this voice, so he said calmly, "Kings should not look directly at them. They have forgotten this saying." Chapter 1904. Han Fei's aggressiveness and dominance stunned everyone below, including Zhongyu. What shocked the onlookers was that this person had injured someone in the Valley of the Medicine Masters and was completely fine. And no one came out to kick him out? The Medicine King Heaven was one of the palaces that the immortal palaces wouldn't target, because most of the great medicines could only be refined in the Medicine King Heaven. Just like this 8th grade divine pill, which sect in the 36 Xiantian realms could refine. Today, this man slapped him in the face and didn't even scold him. This didn't seem like the Medicine King Heaven style. Opponent Wu was shocked. Who was this man? One sword strike? Hiss! Opponent Wu's pupils constricted as he thought of someone. It was the legendary heavenly talent of the Sword God Palace, Wang Yijian, who had disappeared for more than 6,000 years. The Sword God Palace said that this man went into seclusion 6,000 years ago. Some people said that this man betrayed the sect and ran away. Some people said that this man had died long ago. But there was never a real answer. However, all the major palaces knew one thing. This man reached the peak of Challenger 3,000 years ago and tried to open a sword palace. Although he failed, it was enough to prove his terrifying strength. Unexpectedly, a man who had disappeared for 6,000 years had come out of seclusion? Opponent Wu immediately realized that this man must be an 8th grade divine pill. For Wang Yijian, even a 7th grade divine pill was useless. In terms of strength, if he really fought, he would probably be among the top 10 pioneer sea cultivators in the entire chaotic vast sea. However, because Wang Yijian had disappeared in front of people for too long, he was removed from the sea opening list. Soon, many people realized what was going on. They looked at opponent Wu and then at Zhongyu and felt a little better. These years, the Medicine King Heaven had become more and more arrogant. And the people of the Grand Purity Palace had always been arrogant, not to mention a heavenly talent like opponent Wu, who was even more arrogant. Everyone saw that in the sky. Han Fei stepped out and disappeared. Li Xinghan said leisurely, "You don't even know who is coming and you dare to talk nonsense. I can't help but wonder if Brother Wu is still sane." Opponent Wu snorted coldly, stepped into the valley, and disappeared. The entire arena seemed to have returned to its original state. Only Zhongyu felt extremely embarrassed. At the same time, he was shocked. Was this the legendary second sword god? It was rumored that Wang Yijian had the honorific title of one sword slaying a king. It was said that his attainments in the way of the sword were extremely high. However, Wang Yijian's strength was only one aspect. The fundamental reason why the Medicine Kingdom had not clashed with Han Fei was that Wang Yijian had always been arrogant and unruly. This person's personality was like a sword. He would kill whenever he encountered something. His killing intent was too heavy. The Medicine Kingdom didn't dare offend him, just like how the Medicine Kingdom didn't dare offend the Sky Purity Palace. In fact, no one dared to offend Wang Yijian because he was a person who didn't give any face to the 36 immortal palaces. No matter which clan it was, even if it was someone from the Supreme Purity Palace, he would kill them if he said so. To put it bluntly, if an expert from the Sky Purity Palace really dared to challenge Wang Yijian today, unless he had already become an Emperor Realm cultivator, he would not escape death. The 4 immortal palaces, including the Sword God Palace and the Immeasurable Heaven, were able to stand among the 36 immortal palaces for so many years, not because their positions were difficult to find, but because of the combat power of the Sword God Palace, the violence of the Immeasurable Heaven, the wisdom of the Taishan Heaven, and the secret techniques of the Glaze Heaven. Deep in the Medicine King Valley, there were several layers of pavilions here, and there were many buildings on the peaks and mountains. Medicine fields were scattered in the mountains, and the mountains were full of spiritual energy. In the center of these mountains, there was a circular open space, which had been built as the center of the Medicine King Valley. This was the real Medicine King Valley. Han Fei entered this place with Xia Xiaochan. In the depths of the Medicine King Valley, a white-haired woman with a young face looked at the void with a solemn expression. Who else could this person be but old Madame Chiu? Old Madame Chiu said, I thought the sword god would come in person, I didn't expect him to come. Behind old Madame Chiu, a young woman said, Master, is the second sword god not as strong as the sword god? Old Madame Chiu snorted. In this world, sometimes strength is not the only thing that matters. Although the sword god was strong, he still had restrictions on himself. Relatively speaking, he is gentler. However, this person is different. This person is arrogant and lawless. If he gets angry, his body will float for thousands of miles. His strength must be among the top 10 in the chaotic vast sea expansion realm. If he really wants to kill him, it won't be just 1 or 2. In the past, it has been widely said that this person has become a demon and betrayed the Sword God Palace. I didn't expect that he was really cultivating in seclusion. At the same time, Ji Xian came from the Grand Purity Palace. After seeing Han Fei hurt the leader of the Wu clan, he was about to attack. However, Han Fei didn't do anything further. Instead, he found a mountain with abundant spiritual energy at the top of the mountains and sat down cross-legged. As Han Fei sat there, the mountain seemed to become a sword facing the sky. One person changed the momentum of a mountain, which made Ji Xian give up the idea of asking for an explanation. He wasn't really afraid of Wang Yijian. Although Ji Xian might not be able to enter the top 10 in the chaotic vast sea expansion realm, he wouldn't be weaker than Wang Yijian. After all, he was here to buy medicine. The medicine hadn't appeared yet. Was he really going to fight Wang Yijian? The consequences were unpredictable. Even Ji Xian of the Grand Purity Palace thought so. The others didn't dare to provoke this great god and let him sit cross-legged on the top of the mountain. Of course, no one dared to receive him. Old Madame Chiu certainly wouldn't arrange anyone to receive him. He had already settled down. Why would she receive him? On the top of the mountain. Xia Xiaochan was speechless. No one cares about us? It's good that no one cares about us. Our position is so obvious. When I set up a layer of sword aura, whoever dares to perceive it will be directly shattered. In this way, it will be convenient for me to steal things. Xia Xiaochan asked, Are you going to steal the 8th grade divine pill and the Grand Supreme Purple Smoke Furnace together? Xia Xiaochan thought it was very possible. With Han Fei's personality, this kind of thing was completely possible. However, she immediately added, I'm afraid this matter is not so simple. I'm afraid old Madame Chiu won't leave the Grand Supreme Purple Smoke Furnace at all for an 8th grade divine pill. Han Fei said, Everything is possible. But now is not the time to take action. There are still a few days before the 8th grade divine pill is completed. Even if I want to rob it, I will rob it after the divine pill is completed. Otherwise, if such a good pill is destroyed, wouldn't I be robbed for nothing? Xia Xiaochan asked, So we came here just to sit here for a few days? Han Fei said, Don't worry. Whether we can succeed or not, we will be able to figure out the terrain this time. Besides, even if I can't steal the 8th grade divine pill, can't I steal the 7th grade divine pill? Even if there are many 7th grade divine pills guarding it, I can still get some 5th or 6th grade ones. 3 days later. More and more people came from the Medicine King Valley, but no more than 1,000 people came. To Han Fei's surprise, someone from the Martial Emperor City also came. It was Zhang Luotian, the owner of the bookstore, who was said to be one of the top 10 powerhouses in the chaotic vast ocean. Only then did Han Fei remember that the Martial Emperor City was also a major force in the chaotic vast ocean, and one of the top forces. Moreover, the Martial Emperor City was rich and imposing. They could easily earn 100 million for a piece of information. Han Fei felt that buying an 8th grade divine pill was inevitable. At least one of these 8th-grade divine pills would be taken by the martial Emperor City. Han Fei couldn't help but be speechless. The martial Emperor City, Grand Pure, Chaos, and Wuji each took one, and there were only 3 8th-grade divine pills left. According to the Medicine King Valley's previous plan, he wanted to keep 2. In that case, the only thing he could compete for was the last one. Han Fei felt that if he bought it, it might not be that he couldn't afford it, but more than half of his belongings would be gone. Fortunately, he didn't intend to buy it with money from the beginning. Xia Xiaochan was holding 3 sea-quelling bizarre treasures in her hands, plus the one on Han Fei's back, a total of 4 sea-quelling bizarre treasures, just to bid for this 8th-grade divine pill. Even so, Han Fei didn't expect to win it. Even if he could, he would snatch it back. On this day, on the Pill Tribulation Square of the Medicine King Valley, a white-haired woman, holding a white bone staff in her hand, with a purple furnace hovering in her palm, slowly walked out. The moment old Madame Chiu walked out, she heard the sound of something breaking through the void. A king arrived first. Following that, thousands of martial highness cultivators gathered. Among them, the majority were half-king realm powerhouses and peak-level venerables. Everyone had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Therefore, their attention had been focused on this side. However, Han Fei, who was sitting cross-legged on the top of the mountain, suddenly felt refreshed. In the Origin Sea, Han Fei found that the demon purification pot was trembling, and the little vine was dancing, as if it had been touched by something. Little vine. Han Fei couldn't help but be shocked. Was it the other vines of the demon purification pot? But Han Fei didn't see the little vine. Was there something wrong with his senses? Or did the demon purification pot also need an 8th-grade divine pill? Xia Xiaochan said, "What's wrong with old Lady Chiu? Isn't it not time yet? Why did she take out the imperial purple smoke furnace in advance? Isn't this the critical period for the pill formation?" Han Fei narrowed his eyes and said, "No matter what, we must get this pill." Han Fei didn't say he would take the imperial purple smoke furnace, because a treasure of this level would definitely recognize its master. With a thought from old Lady Chiu, the imperial purple smoke furnace would be taken back. Han Fei wanted to take the imperial purple smoke furnace? He had to take old Lady Chiu down first. Even now, Han Fei still vaguely felt that he had agreed to the myriad poison ancestor too readily, hadn't he? At this moment, old Lady Chiu said, "This pill has attracted much attention. To be safe, on the last day, I will let you witness the birth of the divine pill in person in this Pill Tribulation Square." Chapter 1905. Old Lady Chiu waved her hand, and the grand purple smoke furnace turned into a 30-meter-tall furnace and stood on the square. Maybe old Lady Chiu didn't realize the importance of this pill. Maybe she did it on purpose to show off the alchemy strength of the Medicine King Heaven. But in any case, the grand purple smoke furnace was placed on the square. Han Fei knew that even with the Gemini divine technique, he wouldn't be able to steal a furnace in front of so many sea expansion realm kings. There were quite a few experts here whose strength could reach the peak of sea expansion. Zhang Luotian was even recognized as one of the top 10 sea expansion realm masters. So many pairs of eyes were fixed on the grand purple smoke furnace. Could he go over with his black mist body, open the lid, and get in? At this moment, the grand purple smoke furnace was surrounded by purple light, and 3 layers of purple mist were evaporating from the furnace. Someone exclaimed, "This is the grand purple smoke furnace. I don't know how many divine pills it has refined." It's said that with the smoke in this furnace, anything thrown into it can automatically condense a 3-layered Tao pattern pill. Han Fei couldn't help but narrow his eyes, wondering how to deal with this thing. Originally, Han Fei planned to sneak in and do something on the eve of the opening of the pill furnace under the expectation of the outside world. But now, old Lady Chiu had moved the furnace out. How could he do something? Suddenly, Han Fei had an idea. It seemed that it was possible. Han Fei realized that those who appeared here today were all the experts of the major immortal palaces. Among them, many of them were from hostile forces. If he couldn't do something above board, why couldn't he enter the Soul Sea to mess with them? Thinking of this, Han Fei's heart immediately pounded. Little Black and Little White's upgrade speed was not fast. Over the years, he had also entered the Soul Sea. However, as time went on, Little Black and Little White were forced to come out after devouring a few primitive spiritual beasts. They could upgrade many times before, but now they couldn't upgrade by one level even after entering once. Han Fei didn't know what to do. But now the opportunity had come. Why should he devour primitive spiritual beasts? There were many kings here, and he could devour their spiritual beasts. Let's do it. In Han Fei's origin sea, the eyes of the avatar that was cultivating lit up. With a thought, a large number of ownerless souls temporarily controlled Han Fei's body through the void lines. Han Fei, on the other hand, said to Xia Shaochan, "Sit cross-legged in a moment. No matter whose perception swept over, you don't need to worry about it." Xia Shaochan asked, "What's wrong?" "I'll explain it to you later. My soul needs to leave for a while." Xia Shaochan's heart did a flip. Her soul left? She couldn't help but ask, "You want to go to the Soul Sea?" Han Fei was taken aback for a moment and thought, that's true. The existence of the Soul Sea was still a secret in the Yin-Yang heaven. But in the chaotic Azure Sea, that might not be the case. Han Fei said, "Yes." How strong are Little Black and Little White now? When the Soul Sea killed the enemy, the divine soul would temporarily leave the body. If someone were to come looking for me during this period, don't worry. I have a way to deal with the problem of my body. There should be a day before the pill is formed. I know what I'm doing. For others, it might be difficult to enter the Soul Sea. They needed to set up arrays and so on. However, Han Fei was different. Han Fei only needed to enter the origin sea with the Gemini divine technique. After a moment, when Han Fei's soul was attached to Little Black, the wonderful vision came back. However, this time, Little Black and Little White were both venerables. Perhaps their strength was not the same as before. Han Fei felt that there seemed to be infinite power in Little Black, as if there was a universe in his belly. When Han Fei looked around and saw the spiritual beasts swimming past, he immediately found that many of them were not primitive spiritual beasts but spiritual beasts with owners. Besides, the spiritual beasts he encountered around him were completely different from those he encountered in the Yin-Yang heaven. Han Fei saw a 100-meter-long flood dragon, a ribbonfish shining with colorful halos, a crab as big as a mountain, and a shell with a sharp tongue tip. Among them, Han Fei naturally didn't know most of their names. However, Han Fei could see the level of these spiritual beasts. Just where he was, Han Fei found a large number of peak-level venerable-level spiritual beasts, and a few venerable-level spiritual beasts. According to the distance between characters in reality, it only took Han Fei a moment to find the spiritual beasts on the Pill Tribulation Square. In the absence of a battle, the spiritual beasts generally wouldn't be agitated. Han Fei didn't devour them immediately. He was just observing. In Han Fei's eyes, a series of information emerged. Wu. Wu to the head, level 89 golden sword snail. Its carapace looks extremely hard. If I go in and gnaw on it, there will be no problem. Li Xinghen, level 89 ultimate insect. It looks like a long worm. I don't want to eat it. Dream Maker, Nangong Yu, level 87 mysterious gold two-headed python. It's very nutritious. I have to eat it. Oh. Ji Xian? Level 89 three-tailed crabfish. Turns out to be a primeval exotic beast. This thing is only one step away from passing a tribulation, right? If I eat this thing, I'll probably level up directly, right? Bei Xian Bing, level 89 Saber King ancient insect? Why are the people of the Wuji heaven all insects? Han Fei marked all these people. Among them, there were no less than 100 people that Han Fei knew. He got to know them mainly in the place where the king died. Among these 100 people, Han Fei determined that there were a total of 53 hostile forces. Among them, only 2 spiritual beasts aroused Han Fei's fear. One was Hong Yu of the Berserk Corpse Heaven. This guy's spiritual beast had already become a king. Han Fei couldn't help cursing. This old man has a spiritual beast of the Pioneer Sea State? He must be up to no good by hiding it like this. However, Han Fei guessed that since this person concealed his spiritual beast, he didn't want others to know. If Han Fei didn't attack him, this guy didn't have to enter the Origin Sea to find trouble with him. The other was Old Lady Chiu's Jade Heavenly Toad, which was also a spiritual beast of the Pioneer Sea State. According to Xia Shaochan, these people from the Riot Ocean could enter the Soul Sea. If there was really a spiritual beast of the Pioneer Sea State hunting him, then Little Black and Little White would be in great danger. However, thanks to Old Lady Chiu's spiritual beast, because Old Lady Chiu was a strong master of the Medicine King Heaven, she would never let her soul leave her body and enter the Soul Sea. Otherwise, after her soul entered the Soul Sea, what unpredictable things would happen in the outside world? If that happened, she would lose more than she gained. An 8th grade divine pill couldn't be lost. Han Fei quickly worked out a plan. And the Emperor Sparrow had been standing on Little Black's head. The moment Little Black's soul changed, the Emperor Sparrow noticed it. After pondering for a long time, the Emperor Sparrow said, "You're not going to eat these spiritual beasts, are you?" Han Fei was puzzled. "How do you know it's me? You're not as fierce as Little Black." Han Fei was speechless. "I'm going to eat these spiritual beasts. Can't I eat them?" The Emperor Sparrow was silent for a moment. "You can eat them. But aren't you afraid that your spiritual beasts will be possessed? This is the way of cultivation for ferocious beasts. When the spiritual beasts are completely demonized, they will end up like the prehistoric ferocious beasts. Ferocious beasts are ferocious beasts, and they can't become divine beasts." This was the first time that Han Fei had heard of such a saying. Before, he only knew that horror would be born in the Soul Sea. So, there was actually such a Tao inside? Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "What's the benefit of becoming a divine beast?" The Emperor Sparrow stared at Han Fei for a long time and then said, "Divine beasts are orthodox. Just like the righteous path, the evil path, and the righteous path among the races." Han Fei asked, "Can ferocious beasts become gods?" The Emperor Sparrow said, "Yes, but they can never be called divine beasts. They can be called demon gods or evil gods and will only be hated by people." Han Fei asked in confusion, "Does it matter whether I'm hated or not? Isn't it enough if they can become gods? Will they be weaker than divine beasts?" The Emperor Sparrow was stunned for a long time. Well, no. The Emperor Sparrow was probably shocked by Han Fei's idea. Given Han Fei's character of trying his best to save the Yin-Yang heavenly human tribe, wasn't he a righteous person? However, DK didn't know that for Han Fei, the demonic Tao, the evil Tao, and the righteous Tao didn't matter. It didn't matter. Except for the name, nothing has changed. Why can't I eat it? The Emperor Sparrow said, "From now on, you will face an endless pursuit. Killing will always be with you." Han Fei's spiritual sense buzzed. "I've been like this since I was a child. Fight, I am very familiar, eat." DK stared at Han Fei for a long time. For the first time, he said cheerfully, "You're not bad." One day later, the purple mist outside the exalted violet smoke cauldron grew denser and denser. He heard old Madame Chiu say, "Gentlemen, the highest purple smoke furnace is about to be opened." The tribulation clouds were gathering in the sky. This pill would definitely reach the 8th grade. Later, please do not disturb this king from opening the cauldron, and even more so, do not obstruct this king's divine pill's tribulation. Old Madame Chiu was just saying that. Nobody was stupid. It wasn't the first time that most of the people here had seen this scene, but the spiritual pills they had seen before weren't of such high quality. Xia Xiaochan's heart was still in her throat. At this moment there was no chaos, which meant that Han Fei hadn't taken action yet. If Han Fei had really taken action, it would have been a mess. Xia Xiaochan couldn't help but glance at Han Fei. Is he waiting for the tribulation to start? However, what Xia Xiaochan didn't know was how Han Fei determined the time. Chapter 1906. In fact, how could Han Fei know the time in the Soul Sea and the outside world? He was just paying attention to old Lady Qiu's jade heavenly toad and the movements of the ordinary spiritual beasts around him. If a spiritual pill was really born, at least there would be some reaction. Based on his previous experience in the Soul Sea, Han Fei thought that one day should be enough. At this moment, suddenly, Han Fei saw that the spiritual beasts around him slightly moved almost at the same time. This seemed to be a signal to Han Fei that it was time to eat. Immediately, Han Fei controlled Little Black to bare his teeth without hesitation. His first target was Ji Xian's three-tailed crabfish. Yes, Han Fei wasn't scared at all just because Ji Xian was a king. It's true that you're a king, but your spiritual beast isn't a king. The Emperor Sparrow was in a very good mood. Although he didn't dislike Han Fei before, that was because he knew that although Han Fei had done a lot for the sake of the human race, Han Fei couldn't be regarded as a completely good person in essence. Now it seemed that he wasn't a good person at all. In the cultivation world, everything had to be fought for. The so-called justice and evil were all fish **t. As long as one was strong enough, he could make the rules. After chatting with Han Fei, the Emperor's Sparrow also took action. The three-tailed crabfish had extraordinary strength. Its carapace was thick, its steel teeth were like divine weapons, its fins were like sharp blades, and its tail was like sharp silk. It was a real ferocious creature. However, before it could do anything, it felt a demonic sound vibrating in its big brain, as if a monster had entered its brain. Immediately afterward, it heard a cracking sound coming from its body. A large piece of flesh and blood was directly torn by the sharp claws and swallowed by the bird's beak. Its stomach was in an even worse state. There was a huge hole in it. The combat power of Little Black and Little White couldn't be underestimated. When Little Black was still level 1, it bit everything it saw. The knife of the blade fish was chewed crisply like rice crust in its mouth. Although this three-tailed crabfish was a level 89 half-king realm powerhouse, it was completely in a passive situation and couldn't fight at all, so it was directly eaten by Little Black. Chomp, chomp, chomp. Little Black's huge mouth moved at the speed of teleportation. Almost every living being that it went around and chewed one round, that living being turned into a skeleton. It was the same now. In the Soul Sea, the three-tailed crab fish suddenly made a sound, instantly causing a commotion. Many spiritual beasts quickly left, trying to see what was going on. However, when they saw the situation clearly, they saw that the three crabfish only had one fish head left. Smack! There was also a big hole on the fish's head. The part of his brain seemed to have been swallowed by an invisible mouth. Buzz! Sure enough, as Han Fei expected, Little Black and Little White's growth was slow. He had stayed in the yin-yang sky for 10 years, which was a few hundred years to them. In theory, breaking through was a matter of course. As a matter of fact, before the three crabfish were even finished, Little Black and Little White's bodies began to glow, and with a "Gotcha," they both broke through. The outside world. Old Madame Qiu shouted, "There is still one last moment. Everyone, please bear witness to the opening of the furnace, do not disturb me." The lid of the imperial purple smoke cauldron started to tremble. Through the cracks that were exposed during the trembling, a large amount of purple mist could be seen rising. Black clouds were rolling in the sky. It seemed that the tribulation cloud was brewing. Clatter! Suddenly, when the lid flew up, a small green vine was shrouded in purple flames. Above the small vine, 7 round red beads were hanging on the vine. Hiss! Someone couldn't help but ask, "Isn't it supposed to be alchemy? Why does it look like a fruit growing from this little vine?" Someone shouted, "Silence! Maybe this is their way of alchemy. What do you think the effect of an 8th-grade divine pill is?" Someone said, "Look, there are indeed 8 Tao patterns on that medicinal pill. Moreover, those patterns are different from all the Tao patterns that we've seen in history." Boom! At this time, thunder rumbled in the sky. Everyone knew that the pill tribulation was almost ready, and the next step was the pill's tribulation. Everyone was in awe, and the kings were also in awe. Even the effects of an 8th-grade divine pill were different. Seeing that the small vine flew higher and higher, the thunder in the sky couldn't hold back anymore. Lightning arcs kept flashing as if they were about to fall. All of a sudden, Ji Xian, who was watching the tribulation, frowned. For some reason, he had a bad premonition, as if he had lost something important. His intuition told him that his spiritual beast was a bit restless. However, it was not convenient for him to summon his spiritual beast because he was undergoing the tribulation of an 8th-grade divine pill. Surprised by the 8th-grade divine pill, Wu Yuesho secretly clenched his fists. If such a divine pill could belong to him, wouldn't the matter of him becoming a king be set in stone? While he was watching, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain in his head, as if something had broken. He felt a stabbing pain between his eyebrows as if his spiritual beast wanted to come out. Wu Yuesho was shocked. Did my spiritual beast feel the effect of this 8th-grade divine pill and want to come out to fight for it? Boom! When the first pill tribulation came, Wu Yuesho was distracted. The pill tribulation had begun. However, to everyone's surprise, the heavenly tribulation was purple when it came. Even the old lady herself was shocked. What was going on? There had never been a purple pill tribulation before. This was the first time. Was the 8th-grade divine pill more dreadful than she had imagined? The old lady looked solemn. She had made 8th-grade divine pills before. She had made 8th-grade divine pills 3 times in her life. But none of them were like this. Was it because of the small vine? The old lady was shocked. Nobody knew that she had discovered the problem with the small vine while she was making the pills. She had unintentionally found this little vine in her treasure vault. She didn't know what it could do. So, she threw it into the furnace to see what it could do. However, the old lady was shocked to find that the large amount of energy and all the resources she had invested in the Grand Supreme Purple Smoke Furnace were absorbed by the small vine. The old lady had never seen anything like this in her life. The small vine wasn't so big, and it was short. However, under her continuous refining, the small vine began to grow. As it grew, the small vine began to grow leaves. After years of hard work, the small vine had not only tender branches, but also sesame-sized red pills. This scene shocked the old lady. For the first time, she realized that divine pills could grow. Oh no! Old Madame Chiu thought that it was the result of her perseverance and hard work, which meant that it was refined by herself, because the old lady wanted to show the scene of the 7 divine pills going through the heavenly tribulation to show their charm, so that she could ask for a high price from the immortal palaces. However, the old lady didn't expect that there would be a purple pill tribulation. Just like the king tribulation, there were blue and purple. Did the pill tribulation have it too? This meant that the 7 divine pills were different. However, while the old lady was excited, she suddenly heard Yu Tianchan talking to her in her mind. Yu Tianchan said, "2 fierce beasts have appeared in my soul sea. They are hunting spiritual beasts crazily." The old lady? Not only the old lady. On the other side, Hong Yu also heard a voice transmission from his spiritual beast, the 1,000 puppet. There are fierce beasts hunting spiritual beasts. Hong Yu was taken aback. Fierce beasts. The 1,000 puppet said, "Yes. Fierce beasts will also be born in spiritual beasts. Their pursuit is not the orthodox God throne, but the evil Tao. However, these 2 spiritual beasts may be deliberately controlled by someone." Hong Yu was confused. Someone is controlling them? Suddenly, Hong Yu and the old lady changed their faces. Someone is hunting in the Soul Sea? The Jade Tianchan said, yes, very fierce. There was a bird, as well as an invisible creature. Oh right, I saw spirit swallowing fish. The old lady asked, spirit swallowing fish? Hong Yu said, spirit swallowing fish? Are you kidding me? How can that thing appear here? Hiss, are you sure it's a spirit swallowing fish? The divine pills were going through the heavenly tribulation. The old lady knew that once it was discovered, the consequences would be unimaginable. The old lady said, do you have a way to kill them? The Jade Tianchan said, if it's that white spirit swallowing fish, it should be no problem. But there is also an invisible spiritual beast. Besides, that bird is very extraordinary. I dare not kill it. You dare not kill it? The old lady was confused. What kind of creature are you afraid to kill? Different from the old lady, Hong Yu was horrified. Stay away. Don't kill it if you don't dare. Even if the sky falls, the taller ones will hold it up. Ji Xian and Bei Xianbing are both here. If there's anything, just let them handle it. The 1,000 puppets said, I've already run away. Count on them? I'm afraid not. Their spiritual beasts have been eaten. Hong Yu. Chapter 1907. At this moment, both Mrs. Chiu and Hong Yu knew that Han Fei was here. However, at this moment it was the critical period of the pill tribulation, and 3 purple pill tribulations had descended. At this time, if the news that Han Fei was hunting in the Soul Sea, there would be chaos. At that time, if someone secretly tampered with the pill tribulation, it would be a big problem. Therefore, Mrs. Chiu didn't tell them about it at the first time. Was it an excuse? She did. He was wholeheartedly refining the pill, and his mind was completely on the divine pill, so others could not criticize him. If someone else's spiritual beast died, it didn't matter to her. And Hong Yu wouldn't say it. He had been hiding it. At this moment, how could he reveal his secret for someone else's spiritual beast? After confirming that it was Han Fei who did it, Hong Yu thought, anyway, someone will find out. If I reveal it, I will expose the news that my spiritual beast has become a king, and if Han Fei finds out that it was me who revealed it, I won't be able to fight Han Fei. Just a few days ago, there was news that the Avengers had defeated the Marauders. According to the statistics, aside from the 4 Mad Kings who had fallen, the Marauders had lost more than 50 of their own. The slaughter had created a river of blood. The wild corpse heaven was just an outer sea immortal palace. Even though he had endured it and secretly cultivated his spiritual beast into a king, in terms of combat power, he was not necessarily a match for the 4 crazy kings. In terms of combat power, he might not be a match for the 4 crazy kings. He estimated that they were about the same. Since Han Fei could kill the 4 crazy kings, he probably had the strength to kill him too. Therefore, Hong Yu couldn't make a move. The pill tribulation was still going on, but in less than half an hour, many people felt that something was wrong with their spiritual beast. Although spiritual beasts could respond to the Master's call, there were not many that could actively attract the Master's attention. But not many didn't mean there were none. Those who came today could be said to be the top group of the 36 immortal palaces in the entire chaotic ocean. Each of them had extremely high potential, and some even had heavenly veins. Their spiritual beasts were all extraordinary. Suddenly, on the Wuji heaven's side, Li Xinghen's eyebrows suddenly flickered. Many people frowned. Some kings even cast angry glances at him. However, Li Xinghen did not care. In the void, a bloodied extremis nematode with only half of its body left appeared in everyone's sight. Not good. There was a reason why Li Xinghen suddenly summoned his spiritual beast. In fact, most of the people here had sensed that something was wrong with their spiritual beast. However, Han Fei's devouring speed wasn't that fast, so most of his spiritual beasts were safe, so they didn't pay much attention to him. The other reason was that Tier 8 divine pills were about to appear in the world. Many people thought it was the divine elixir that attracted the spiritual beast, but they didn't think of any other reasons. But now, seeing Li Xinghen's spiritual beast in such a miserable state, most people suddenly felt that something was wrong. Ji Xian was the first to bear the brunt of the attack. He knew something was wrong and shouted, "Someone is hunting in the Soul Sea." Buzz, 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 everyone summoned their spiritual beasts. At this moment, how could he still care about grade 8 divine pills? Although the divine pill was good, it did not belong to him. It would most likely be taken away by the kings of the immortal palaces like the Grand Pure One and the Limitless One. Most people came for grade 7 divine pills and grade 5 or grade 5 Tao pattern pills. How could they ignore the life and death of their spiritual beasts in order not to affect the pill tribulation? As soon as this spiritual beast was summoned, everyone was in an uproar. Ji Xian looked at his level 1 three-tailed crabfish, which was in its infancy, and exploded with fury. "Asshole! Who is it?" Wu Xiangtou frowned. "How did my golden sword snail become a snail egg? Who was the one who did this?" "Nangong," you shouted in a low voice, "not good. The mysterious gold two-headed serpent has become a juvenile." Bei Xian Bing looked at her juvenile saber king ancient insect and said with an ugly face, "Xing Heng, all the undamaged spiritual beasts of the Wuji heavens, enter the Soul Sea." Someone shouted, "Which demonic cultivator dares to offend the heavens and cause trouble here?" Old Lady Chiu couldn't pretend anymore. Who would have thought that the fellow in the Soul Sea would expose himself at the 5th pill tribulation? "Can't you stall for a little more time?" Old Lady Chiu pretended to spit out a mouthful of blood, as if she had just come back to her senses. She shouted, "Everyone, Yu Tianshan told me that it's the twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish and the Gemini divine technique. Han Fei is here. Zhongyu, activate the island protecting array and seal the island immediately. No one is allowed to leave. Li Ji, protect me. My mind can't leave the 8th grade divine pill." Old Lady Chiu found an excuse for herself and then stood still again. She couldn't do anything about this. Han Fei knows the Gemini divine technique, and it's impossible to guard against him. How can I know he will come here? Besides, there are so many people from the Medicine King heaven this time. How can I guard against them all? Now that you've discovered the problem and I've provided the information, you just need to find Han Fei yourself. However, how the F***ck do you find the Gemini divine technique? Countless divine souls quickly scan the area within 1,000 miles. The perception range of the Pioneer Sea realm was even further. However, when these spirits swept past a certain mountain peak, they would all show a slight look of surprise. This Wang Yijian was so eccentric. He was so far away from everyone, and when their perception probed him, it was immediately shattered by the sword qi around him. He didn't show any respect to them at all. However, at first, everyone didn't care because this guy was very eccentric. Besides, Yu Tianshan had already said that it was Han Fei. What appeared in the Soul Sea was the twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish. Therefore, no one associated Wang Yijian with Han Fei. In the Soul Sea, when Han Fei was chasing the polar nematode, he didn't feel good. Han Fei finally knew why Li Xinghen was so arrogant. This worm ran really fast. Even though it was targeted by Little Black, even though the Emperor Sparrow took action, it still broke 5 parts of its body in a row and ran away. Although the Emperor Sparrow immediately summoned the inner demon to stop the polar nematode, as soon as Han Fei arrived, Li Xinghen actually summoned the polar nematode. Han Fei was helpless. Of course, more than half of this polar nematode had been eaten by Han Fei, and only a small part of it escaped, so it didn't matter. However, Han Fei knew that as soon as this polar nematode went out, the fact that he was hunting in the Soul Sea would be exposed. Sure enough, after only 5 seconds, Han Fei found that many spiritual beasts around him had become agile. Several spiritual beasts rushed directly towards Little White. Looking at the eyes of those spiritual beasts, Han Fei knew that someone had come to the Soul Sea. However, these people were not very strong. At this moment, during the moment when Han Fei was devouring, Little Black and Little White had advanced 3 levels in a row. The main reason was that they ate so well. They ate spiritual beasts that were half a king level. Besides, their quality was either prehistoric ferocious beasts, ancient mutants, or legendary creatures. Anyway, the effect of one meal was comparable to hundreds of years of cultivation for Little Black and Little White. It could be seen that Little Black and Little White had suffered a lot because they didn't even have food to eat. Since he had been exposed, Han Fei didn't care. It was just that Han Fei's identity had been exposed. But he wasn't Han Fei now. He was Wang Yijian. They were looking for Han Fei? Then let's find them. Even if someone had found Little White, Han Fei wouldn't allow anything to happen to it. He rushed up and killed a ghost-beard devil cuttlefish with a swish. After eating one, Little Black disappeared again. This was the first time that Han Fei had a Soul Sea battle. Han Fei sensed that the person who was eaten was also trying to escape. When Han Fei completely killed this guy with the last blow, Han Fei found that the ghost-beard devil cuttlefish's soul body shattered and then disappeared. The Emperor Sparrow said, "There are pioneer sea-state spiritual beasts nearby. It's time for you to leave." Wait a minute. Stay a little longer before you leave. In the outside world, Bei Xianbing suddenly shouted, "Fellow cultivator Yijian, everyone let go of the restrictions and let us search freely. Don't you think it's inappropriate for you to block a corner of the mountain without saying a word? After all, there were many kings here." It didn't take long for someone to notice Wang Yijian, who had been sitting cross-legged and never moving. He didn't even look at the 8th-grade divine pills. "Aren't you here to buy pills?" Many people looked at the mountain on Han Fei's side, including Ji Xian. However, Han Fei didn't say anything. Xia Shaochan said, "How can my master allow others to search?" Bei Xianbing immediately became angry. "Humph! You're just a sword servant. How dare you talk to me?" Then, Bei Xian pointed at Xia Shaochan. In fact, he just wanted to see Han Fei's reaction. Of course, he knew that Han Fei was extremely arrogant. Besides, as a sword cultivator legend, he was certainly extraordinary. However, the kings had scanned the thousands of kilometers around and even the entire Medicine King heaven. Almost everywhere that they could perceive, they found nothing wrong. Only Han Fei was not allowed to be searched at all. Anyone's perception would be crushed to pieces, not giving any face at all. They were all top experts. Although they knew that Wang Yijian was ruthless, weren't they? Ji Xian shook his head slightly. Bei Xianbing was still too young. Although it was indeed a serious matter that his spiritual beast had been swallowed. Were you going to question Wang Yijian? But now was not the time to ask. Wait until the pill tribulation was over. When the pill tribulation was over, old Lady Qiu would deal with this matter. But now you attacked so arrogantly, and you attacked the sword servant of the second sword divine king. Even if you're just testing him, you can't just say a few words. Sure enough, the moment Bei Xianbing attacked, Han Fei suddenly opened his eyes and said, "Are you questioning me?" Chapter 1908. Everyone knew that if a person wanted to enter the Soul Sea, his soul would be projected into the body of his spiritual beast. His soul was no longer in the real world, so he couldn't make any moves. The corporeal body was like a dead person. It could not move, and it was impossible for it to speak. Now that Han Fei had spoken, many of them were relieved. In their view, this at least proved that Wang Yijian was not a problem. However, although Wang Yijian was fine, Bei Xianbing and the others knew that 10 years ago, when Han Fei broke into the savage abyss, the sword god took action. Wang Yijian, the second sword god, was likely to protect Han Fei. The land he was guarding might be Han Fei's hiding place. After all, if Han Fei used the Gemini divine technique and got the protection of a strong master, others really couldn't find him. Behind Han Fei, the broken sword suddenly appeared. The sword pierced through Bei Xianbing's finger as easily as piercing a layer of paper. Many people took a breath. Did Wang Yijian make a move? Although many people knew that the Grand Pure One and the Wuji Sword God's Palace were very strong, it didn't mean that the Sword God's Palace was not strong. Wang Yijian was a real peerless heavenly talent in history. At the age of 3,000, he tried to open a sword palace and break the heavenly gate. Was it easy to mess with such a person? Being scolded by Han Fei in such a manner, Bei Xianbing was already embarrassed. He said, "Fellow cultivator Yijian, from the moment you entered the sect to now, you have been sitting cross-legged on this top of the mountain. Have you ever thought about changing places?" Now that they were arguing, Bei Xianbing didn't want to give up. No matter how strong the Sword God's Palace was, it had to rely on the alliance of the four palaces. Although Wang Yijian had been arrogant in the past, could he still openly make a move in the Valley of the Medicine Masters? Now, he was undergoing the pill tribulation. How dare Wang Yijian use the power of this world? However, Han Fei looked straight at Bei Xianbing, his eyes cold and indifferent, and his white hair fluttered slightly in the breeze. He said, "Are you teaching me how to do things?" Bei Xianbing's face turned cold. "Wang Yijian, don't change the subject. Aren't you afraid that your spiritual beast will be hunted?" However, Han Fei said slowly and indifferently, "Spiritual beast? I've already sacrificed myself to the sword." Bei Xianbing. Everyone. As for Hong Yu and the others, they all shook their heads. They really didn't know about this matter. However, what couldn't these sword cultivators do? Not to mention sacrificing spiritual beasts to the sword, he could even sacrifice himself. Therefore, when Han Fei said that his spiritual beast was sacrificed to the sword, no one was surprised. For a person like Wang Yijian, he didn't need a spiritual beast to cultivate sword Dao. Wow! Han Fei suddenly stood up and stretched out his hand, and the broken sword flew to Han Fei from behind. The tip of the sword was facing up and the hilt was facing down, as if it was waiting for Han Fei to hold it. Han Fei stood straight without touching the hilt of his sword. Instead, he looked at Bei Xianbing with eyes full of killing intent and said slowly, "After so many years, you are the only one who dares to attack me. Perhaps someone has already forgotten my name." His title? Many people were stunned. Didn't they say he was the second sword god? Was there something else besides his name? Suddenly, someone exclaimed, "In addition to the second sword god, this person also has the reputation of killing a king with one sword." Could it be? Many people looked at Han Fei in shock. No way. Just for such a trivial matter? At this moment, for some reason, the pill tribulation of an 8th grade divine pill didn't seem to be so pleasant anymore. Everyone's eyes fell on Han Fei and Bei Xianbing. Last time, Bei Xianbing defeated one of Han Fei's clones with one finger. This time, Han Fei didn't really want to deal with Bei Xianbing. Han Fei just wanted to mess up the situation, because he wouldn't allow the little vine and the fruit on the little vine to fall into the hands of others. So, Han Fei stretched out his hand. Bei Xianbing's eyes turned cold. "It is said that you, Wang Yijian, have the title of killing a king with one sword, but you still failed to open the sky. I wonder if the glory of the past can still be used today?" Although Bei Xianbing was a younger generation, she was also a top heavenly talent in Wang Yijian's era. She became a king only 800 years later than Wang Yijian. Therefore, theoretically speaking, they were not far off from each other in terms of eras. Bei Xianbing opened her hands. Her 10 fingers were like jade, and ice condensed on her arms. Someone said in surprise, "Ice Cloud Claw? That's the Ice King's unique sea-quelling bizarre treasure. It is said that it can freeze the soul and the bloodline. Are these two going to fight here now?" On the Medicine King's side, Zhong Yu shouted, "You two, we are in the middle of the pill tribulation. Why do you have to fight now? No matter what, at least wait until the pill tribulation is over." Bei Xianbing actually didn't want to fight. As the saying went, Famous people are not just for show. Just Han Fei's clothes revealed evil inside and out. However, Han Fei's momentum was overwhelming. It didn't cause much damage, but it was extremely insulting. Originally, Bei Xianbing said that to the other side because Han Fei didn't let her investigate. She thought that what if Han Fei was hiding under Wang Yijian's protection? This was hard to say. After all, the sword god had helped Han Fei. There was no reason for the second sword god to not help. In fact, there were many people who had the same idea. At the same time, Han Fei knew that Wang Yijian's identity was safe. Only then did he attempt to summon the Larch Sparrow. Why did he summon the Emperor Sparrow? This was because the Larch Sparrow was the kind of fellow that might not come out even if it was summoned. Could even communicate with him within the Soul Sea. Now that his primary soul was gone, he would have to leave his Soul Sea if he tried to contact the Emperor Sparrow. In the Soul Sea, Han Fei controlled Little Black and was still swallowing crazily. White E's speed was so fast that no living creature could get close to it. Due to the presence of the Larch Sparrow, the Jade Heaven Toad only made a few probing attacks. However, Emperor Sparrow's gaze turned solemn. Yu Tiantoad felt that a demon was born in his heart, so he didn't really make a move. At this moment, Little Black and Little White had leveled up 4 times. Suddenly DK said, "I can feel your summoning. Isn't your soul here? Who's calling me?" Han Fei frowned. "It's my external incarnation. Looks like it's time to go out." In the outside world, Han Fei released his sword domain. Everyone's senses could already fall on the top of the mountain. However, there was nothing. At the same time, Han Fei said indifferently, "Medicine King Heaven, let's figure out who started this first." While speaking, Han Fei held the shattering sword with one hand. At that moment, all kinds of Da seemed to gather. A wave of extremely pure power surged on the sword's blade. Someone was shocked. "What is this power? I've never seen it before." However, Ji Xian's expression was solemn as he said word by word, "Celestial Spirit Qi?" At that moment, Zhong Yu shouted, "Senior, wait." However, who was Zhong Yu? How could he stop someone like Wang Yijian? Han Fei ignored him. Anyway, he had old scores to settle with Bei Xianbing, so he could kill him. At this moment, Han Fei's power rose to the peak. In addition to the celestial spiritual qi, there was also the ferocious qi surging on the sword. Anyway, Bei Xianbing was not an idiot. Seeing this scene, she immediately shouted, "Wang Yijian, this is not the time to fight. Are you deliberately sabotaging this pill tribulation?" Han Fei said indifferently, "I don't touch the energy of heaven and earth here. Besides, the saboteur is you. No one in the world dares to mess with me. Since you want to die, I will fulfill your wish." Swish hum, 2 kinds of power were intertwining. The celestial spiritual qi and the ferocious qi intertwined like a sword and directly attacked Bei Xianbing. Bei Xianbing had always been an extremely conceited person. She thought that few people in the chaotic ocean could defeat her. However, in the face of Han Fei's sword, Bei Xianbing felt that her blood was exploding. What the hell is this sword? How could a sword be cultivated to such an extent? Bei Xianbing wanted to summon her spiritual beast, but unfortunately, her spiritual beast was killed by the opponent. Although the remaining 2 contractual spiritual beasts were also in the half-king realm, it made no difference under this power. Bei Xianbing's body was covered with a layer of blue ice armor. In her hand, ice piled up, and the mist was like a muddy pool, trying to block Han Fei's sword. Not far away, Zhang Luotian shook his head slightly. "It's not just the celestial spiritual qi. Mr. One Sword's killing intent has already shown the ferocious qi of the primordial world. These 2 kinds of power are both used by a heaven-opening state master. Is it possible that Mr. One Sword has already opened the sky?" Bei Xianbing's face turned green. How could she have expected that Han Fei would attack so suddenly? Moreover, his first move was a sure kill move? Damn it, isn't he trying to kill me? At that moment, even though Bei Xianbing used a secret method, she still felt that she was no match for him. Bei Xianbing shouted, "Brother Ji, help me!" Ji Xian pretended not to hear it and complained in his heart, "Are you King retarded? This is the sword Dao of a heaven-opening state master. You want me to block it for you? Why should I block it for you?" Bei Xianbing looked around and realized that she had been careless. As the saying went, there is always someone better than you. She could provoke anyone, but she shouldn't provoke the lunatics of the heavenly sword heaven. Especially this Wang Yijian. His reputation was not good to begin with. Was there something wrong with his brain to provoke him? In an instant, Bei Xianbing saw the 8th grade divine pill that was undergoing a tribulation. At this moment, the divine pill was undergoing the 8th heavenly tribulation. Bei Xianbing was shocked. After all, her life should be more important than this so-called divine pill. It should be a good idea to resist Han Fei's sword with the help of the heavenly tribulation. Swish! He saw Bei Xianbing hiding behind the level 8 God pill. At this moment, old Lady Qiu couldn't sit still anymore. She shouted, "Bei Xianbing, do you want to destroy my divine pill? The Medicine King Heaven will fight you to the death." Unfortunately, it was too late for old Lady Qiu to shout at the critical moment. Because Han Fei's terrifying sword slashed the divine pill, the heavenly tribulation, and Bei Xianbing together. Rumble, the sky was torn apart. Old Lady Qiu and the other sea expansion experts were shocked. Is he going to tear down the Medicine King Valley? Boom! In the terrifying explosion, the sky collapsed. Bei Xianbing's body collapsed, but she wasn't dead yet. She just felt that her soul was imprisoned by some special power. At this moment, a voice appeared in Bei Xianbing's mind. "Congratulations, you're right. So, you have to die." All of a sudden, a blood-colored crack appeared in the sky, piercing through the horizon. Hiss! All of a sudden, everyone became silent. Bei Xianbing was killed by a single sword attack? Chapter 1909. Speaking of which, the moment Bei Xianbing died, everyone present was dumbfounded. Putting aside the fact that he had died, a vast heavenly tribulation had appeared in the sky for some unknown reason. The heavenly tribulation smashed into the collapsed void. As soon as they resisted the remaining power of Han Fei's sword, the 9th heavenly tribulation appeared in the sky. While everyone was shocked by Bei Xianbing's death, the old lady exclaimed, 9 pill tribulations. 9. I made a 9th grade divine pill. At that moment, the old lady rushed into the collapsed void, ignoring the remaining power of the divine demonic evil qi. But then, the old lady's cry resounded in the sky. "Where is my pill? Who stole my pill? How is it possible? Is it Han Fei? That's impossible. How could Han Fei steal the pill? When did he come out of the Soul Sea?" Someone was shocked. It must be the Gemini Divine Technique. A pioneer sea cultivator using the Gemini Divine Technique may be beyond our expectations. Han Fei, you shameless thief! Give me back my pill! At that moment the old lady was furious. She never expected that the source of trouble would come out of the Soul Sea. Han Fei must have calculated to the extreme. Pooh! The old lady vomited a mouthful of blood. Li Ji, the king of the Medicine King Heaven, hurriedly said, "Master," the old lady shouted, "lock down the Medicine King Heaven. No one is allowed to leave or contact the outside world." Then, ignoring the terrifying power of the Medicine King Valley, the old lady glared at Han Fei. "Wang Yijian, I don't think I've mistreated you. Why did you ruin the Medicine King Heaven's plan?" However, Han Fei looked straight at the old lady. "Are you questioning me?" It was this sentence again. Countless people were horrified when they heard it. Just now, Bei Xianbing couldn't hold back the insult of Han Fei's words and retorted. As a result, she was killed by Han Fei's sword. Now, the old lady was following Bei Xianbing's footsteps? Everyone wanted old Madame Qiu to shut up. "You're indeed unparalleled in alchemy, but in terms of fighting, who knows where you're ranked? But this time, Han Fei said indifferently, I drew my sword just to kill that person. It was rare for Han Fei to give an explanation, but it was just a casual one. In other words, Bei Xianbing wanted to use the pill tribulation to block his immortal fiendish qi. Who would have thought that? If you don't blame Bei Xianbing, are you going to blame me? At this moment, the geniuses of the Wuji celestial realm were all dumbfounded. This was especially so for Li Xingheng and the others. They had just witnessed their king being slaughtered with a single sword strike. For the first time, they realized that the people of the heavenly sword sky were simply too powerful. This was only the second sword god, able to kill a king with a casual swing of his sword. What about the real sword god? Many people were enlightened. No wonder the sword god palace, boundless palace, Taishan palace, and lapis lazuli palace could coexist peacefully in the inner region. With such king combat power, how many people would dare to provoke them? Mrs. Chiu was speechless. Only then did Mrs. Chiu realize that she couldn't vent her anger on this person at this moment. Wang Yijian's reputation was like this. He would kill without a word. In the eyes of this kind of swordsman, the strong were used to slaughter. Except for their swords, they had no feelings. Han Fei sat cross-legged on the top of the mountain and didn't move. Mrs. Chiu didn't dare to make trouble for Han Fei again. The others naturally wouldn't ask for trouble. Xia Xiaochan felt that her back was wet. She didn't know how Han Fei could still be so calm in this situation. What surprised her even more was Han Fei's sword strike. What the hell was that? Did he really kill a king with a single sword strike? At this moment, Xia Xiaochan had countless questions in her mind. But because she was still in the Medicine King heaven, she restrained herself. In fact, in Han Fei's origin sea, the demon purification pot was fusing with a small vine. Han Fei's heart was burning. There were indeed 7 divine pills hanging on the small vine, and he swallowed hard. Speaking of which, where did this little vine come from? Of course, it was all calculated by Han Fei. Han Fei dilly-dallied and didn't draw his sword just to wait for the pill tribulation to come. Because Han Fei knew that this sword strike would be extremely powerful. After all, the black mist body and the divine demonic evil qi were both sent out. Seeing that she couldn't resist the divine demonic evil qi, Bei Xianbing had to find a force that could compete with it. At this time, the pill tribulation happened to come. If it were another king, he would probably choose the same way and find a pill tribulation to resist for him. Therefore, he had a way to get in touch with the small vine. It was originally a vine of the demon purification pot, so Han Fei could easily put it into Forge the Universe. As for the last 9th pill tribulation, to be honest, Han Fei didn't know what was going on. Han Fei guessed that it was because Bei Xianbing and he had both entered the range of the pill tribulation, so the 9th pill tribulation came. At this moment, the 5th small vine was slowly being connected to the demon purification pot. He wondered if Mrs. Chiu knew that the ultra-quality divine pill she had devoted so much effort to refining had become the fruit of a small vine on the demon purification pot. How traumatized would she be? But now, Han Fei was very happy. Every time the small vine appeared, the demon purification pot would always have some changes. Last time, the 4th small vine appeared and gave him the bloodline-devouring divine technique. This time, he didn't know what else was waiting for him. After waiting for a while, when the demon purification pot spun for a long time in the origin sea, it finally slowed down. Gudu! Han Fei swallowed and came to the small vine. Han Fei was speechless and thought to himself, how could I keep my composure? When his soul entered the soul sea, he didn't know that the 8th grade divine pill that Mrs. Chiu mentioned turned out to be the small vine. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in the mood to devour spiritual beasts. At this moment, in the origin sea, Little Black and Little White were hovering and breaking through 4 levels in a row. They needed some time to stabilize. DK looked at the demon purification pot curiously, thinking about something. When Han Fei approached the demon purification pot, his eyes fell on the divine pill on the demon purification pot, and information appeared in his eyes. Name 8-9 Mystic Pill Introduction and Mystic Pill of Heavenly Law that absorbs the essence of all things. This pill is all-encompassing and contains all kinds of divine powers and technique. First pill contains the Golden Light Footwork Technique. Once the golden light appears, one can jump 10,000 kilometers. Cultivates the Golden Light Leap Technique and roams between heaven and earth in a flash. Second pill perceives the Dharma world and uses the body as the law, the body as the image, and the body as the image. With the 9 heavens above your head and your feet in the abyss sea, your body is 33,000 meters high, and you can swallow everything into your original form. Third pill uses the art of infinite transformation, perceives the heavenly law, feels the impermanence of everything, and controls the infinite changes. Fourth pill rides the clouds, controls the stars, and subdues the sea. The first move is the 9 heavens cloud rain thunder, and the second move is the earth chi spiritual aura. Suppress a sea and open a sky. Here, I am the master of the universe. Fifth pill, the soul leaves the body and opens the 8th sense of the human soul. When the soul leaves the body, the mountains and rivers are shattered, the earth is flat, and everything in the world is heartless. He knows that man has no self, the law has no self, and the world has no self. Sixth pill, as long as the divine body is not broken, the world will not be destroyed. Cultivates the supreme divine body. His voice is like the wind and clouds of the 4 seasons, and his voice is like thunder. His eyes are like the sun, the moon, and the stars. His body is like the 4 poles. His body is like the earth. His blood is like the river and the sea, and his thoughts are like the rain and dew. Seventh pill, the immortal slaying knife. There is only one knife. It can calm the sea and slay immortals. If the gods don't come out, who can compete with it? Remarks, the 8-9 arcane pill is only mature for now. On the day the pill is formed, it must pass the pill tribulation before it can be eaten. This vine is nourished and slowly grows. Gulp, when Han Fei saw the 8-9 arcane pill, he was dumbfounded. There were a total of 7 pills, each of which was extraordinary. It seemed that each of them contained a divine skill. 7 of these heaven-defying pills were produced in an instant. And the last 7th pill. If the gods didn't come out, who could compete with it? Han Fei guessed at that time that if he learned the immortal slaying knife, he would be able to slaughter even venerable emperors. Gulp! Han Fei swallowed again. At this time, Han Fei looked at the small vine again and found that on this small vine, there were 7 small red pills growing from the bottom to the top. Only the one at the bottom had 9 patterns on it, and the other 6 small red pills all had 8 patterns on them. And what was more obvious was that the small pill at the bottom was shining with golden light, as if it was about to mature and fall. Needless to say, this was the first pill. This pill was known as the Golden Light Movement Technique, which could leap tens of thousands of miles. In a flash, it traveled between heaven and earth. It looked like a movement technique or a spatial spell. Unfortunately, Han Fei was just a black mist body now. He'd better swallow this kind of divine pill after he merged the twins into one and when there was no one around. Besides, now the outside world was frantically looking for him. If he merged the twins into one now, as long as someone felt the subtle changes, his identity as Wang Yijian wouldn't be safe. Therefore, Han Fei wasn't in a hurry to merge the twins into one. Fortunately, at the moment when the space collapsed just now, he took the little vine away. As the power of the explosion fell, it drilled into the grand supreme purple smoke furnace. Han Fei estimated that even if these people racked their brains, they wouldn't be able to guess that he had set the space node in the grand supreme purple smoke furnace. At that time, as long as they couldn't find him, they couldn't all be trapped here. Even if the Medicine King wanted to be trapped, it would depend on whether the other families would give him face or not. At least, with Wang Yijian's identity, he wouldn't care about face. Killing without hesitation was Wang Yijian's style. Thinking about this, Han Fei as Wang Yijian sat cross-legged peacefully. He even purposely patrolled the area where the explosion had occurred, frowning slightly to make others think about it. Chapter 1910. Old Lady Chiu's 8th grade divine pills were stolen, and the king's inspections were fruitless. How would they dare to hold the so-called alchemy conference again? They had said that there were 7th grade divine pills and a large number of 5th grade and 6th grade Dao pattern pills for sale. Now it seemed that Han Fei had come to kill them. The group of kings couldn't find anyone who would take out the pill that they had spent so much effort to refine. Now that the Medicine King conference was cancelled, some people wanted to leave. Bei Xuanbing's death was no small matter. Bei Xianbing was the grandson of the everlasting ancestral patriarch, Bei Luochen. Now that Bei Xianbing was dead, Bei Luochen should be on his way. It didn't matter if others left or not, but Han Fei definitely had to leave. Although he still had reserves of immortal spiritual qi and fiendish qi, the everlasting ancestral patriarch was a heaven-opening state cultivator. He might use the immortal spiritual qi. Han Fei could kill Bei Xianbing, but he couldn't do it against Bei Luochen. So, after scanning for a while, Han Fei suddenly got up. "I'm leaving. If I find the divine pills, I'll come back." Han Fei didn't hide his intention to run away. In fact, many people were also watching the show. Wang Yijian killed Bei Xianbing. Would Bei Luochen let it go? Once they met, there would be a super battle. How could he escape? Now that Wang Yijian was leaving, everyone was slightly relieved. And Ji Chen and the others slightly breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that Wang Yijian hadn't opened the heaven-opening state yet. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come to the Medicine King heaven to buy pills, and he wouldn't have run away when he saw Bei Luochen, obviously, although he could use some of the power of a heaven-opening state cultivator. He was still afraid of a real heaven-opening state cultivator. Sword cultivators were always fearless, but that didn't mean they would wait for death. Who didn't know the value of life? However, some people were still worried that Wang Yijian was protecting Han Fei. If Wang Yijian left, Han Fei might be gone too. Who could he complain to then? At this moment, suddenly, a half-king girl ran to the Pill Tribulation Square and faced Han Fei. "One-Sword King, I'm Dongfang Yueshi. The Medicine King heaven has just taken place, and you want to leave? Although everyone knows why, who can prove that you won't take Han Fei away? After all, many people know that the Sword God Palace once helped Han Fei." Wow! Instantly, many people were surprised. Is this girl crazy? Do you know who you're talking to? Even old Madame Chiu's expression changed greatly. "You shut up." However, Dongfang Yueshi said, "I know the second sword god is very powerful. However, just because he's strong doesn't mean he can be unreasonable." But at that moment, someone slapped his forehead and thought, "Is this girl out of her mind? This Wang Yijian, was he the kind of reasonable person?" However, there were also some people who secretly thought, if it was a junior who said this to Wang Yijian, it may be okay. Could it be that Wang Yijian would bully a half-king? Sure enough, Han Fei paused for a few seconds, looked at Dongfang Yueshi, and said, "First of all, the strong can be unreasonable. Secondly, with this king's sword guarding the Medicine King's heaven, it was impossible for Han Fei to escape. He was still here. As for his exact location, it's up to you to find him." After that, the shattering sword behind Wang Yijian cut open the void with the light-splitting sword shadow. Han Fei left, and Xia Shaochan followed him with her sword. It wasn't until the two of them left that Dongfang Yueshi felt weak in the knees. She was extremely scared to talk to such a murderous man. Fortunately, she had gambled correctly. Wang Yijian would not make a move on a junior. Otherwise, what he said just now was enough to make Wang Yijian stab himself to death. When Han Fei really left, Bei Tangxian's face was pale. He wanted to search for Bei Xuanbing's body. However, she had been strangled to death. Where could he find her body? Wang Yijian. Bai Tangxian gritted his teeth and clenched his fists, as if telling himself, I must become stronger. In the future, I will kill Wang Yijian with my own hands. Li Xinghen patted Bai Tangxian on the shoulder. This matter is beyond our control. The ancestral patriarch will uphold justice. Bai Tangxian snorted. Damn it. The sword god's palace should all die. Compared with Bai Xianbing of the Wuji Heaven, who died on the spot, Ji Xian of the Grand Purity Palace slowly breathed a sigh of relief. At least, compared with the Wuji Heaven, they were better off. Although their spiritual beasts were killed and turned into infants, at least they weren't dead. After a long time of cultivation, they could still be restored. Besides, Ji Xian was glad that he didn't challenge Wang Yijian. This battle also showed him the strength of the Sword God's palace. In the past, even he thought that the Grand Purity Palace was so strong that it couldn't even take down the 4 palaces of the Sword God's palace. Now it seemed that they really couldn't take it down. Even if they could, how much would they have to pay? The second Sword God was already so strong. Then, what about the real Sword God? Half a day later. Because the others didn't have as much confidence as Han Fei, they naturally couldn't leave. They were taken away by the people of the Medicine King Heaven, gathered together and settled down. At this time, Bai Luochen arrived. As soon as Bai Luochen appeared, he saw Li Xinghen and the other strong masters of the Wuji Heaven kneeling on the square. Bai Tangxian's eyes were red. Great Ancestor, please help me. Uncle was killed on the spot by Wang Yijian of the Sword God's palace. That thief was extremely ferocious and arrogant. Great Ancestor, you have to help Uncle. Bai Luochen frowned and said with an ugly face, Wang Yijian? He's not dead? Bai Luochen couldn't help but look at old Lady Qiu who was waiting on the square. Obviously, the old lady was still here to give Bai Luochen an explanation. Old Lady Qiu told the story stiffly, and Bai Luochen frowned even more. In fact, old Lady Qiu didn't want to talk to Bai Luochen at all. If Bai Xianbing hadn't rashly provoked Wang Yijian, if Bai Xianbing hadn't been no match for Wang Yijian and had to rely on the pill tribulation to help her resist Wang Yijian's sword, Han Fei wouldn't have had the opportunity to rob all her divine pills. However, old Lady Qiu wasn't strong enough. She couldn't say some words to a heaven-opening state expert like Bai Luochen, so she could only grit her teeth and swallow it. 9th-grade divine pills were indeed extremely important, but the protection of the Grand Pure Wuji Palace and the other palaces was equally important. Otherwise, although the Medicine King Heaven didn't lack beast kings, after all, they were much weaker than those wild beast kings who had come out of life and death battles. Bai Luochen's perception swept over the place again and again. He saw Zhang Luotian and Ji Xian. Zhang Luotian was calm and composed. So what if he was a heaven-opening state expert? No matter how strong he was, he wouldn't dare to attack the people of the martial emperor city. Bai Luochen said, Ji Xian, how's the situation? Ji Xian sighed and said, Senior, Bing Wang was too eager to find Han Fei, so he offended Wang Yijian. And this person is indeed very arrogant. He seemed to have already mastered the immortal qi, and there was another kind of great power. The sword formed by these two forces is extremely powerful and murderous. The sea-opening state is really difficult to resist. Bai Luochen was silent for a long time. He grabbed a wisp of dissipating power from the void and felt it. What a strong murderous aura! Wang Yijian is indeed possessed. Possessed. Ji Xian, old Lady Qiu, and the others were all surprised. It seemed that Wang Yijian was quite normal. What? Did he become a demon? Bai Luochen didn't explain. His perception swept over the Medicine King Heaven. He even checked every inch of land and every object, but there was no trace of Han Fei at all. Bai Luochen said, Wang Yijian, Sword God Palace, do you really think the Wuji Heaven doesn't dare to start a civil war? Bai Luochen snorted heavily and looked at Li Xinghen and Bai Tangxian. Let's go back to the palace. 7 days later. He had checked everyone he could find. He had searched everyone he could find, but there was no trace of Han Fei. But the Medicine King Heaven couldn't really surround others and not let them leave. The first to propose to leave was the Martial Emperor City. Zhang Luotian said, "The Martial Emperor City is here to buy pills, not to be investigated." Then, the major palaces also asked to leave one after another. Ji Chen and the others also couldn't sit still. On this day, everyone was just about to leave. Suddenly, the glabella of someone in the Medicine King Heaven flashed, and his spiritual beast appeared. However, he was shocked to find that his spiritual beast had become a baby. Someone was shocked. Han Fei is still here, Han Fei is still here. Only a moment later, when old Lady Qiu arrived, Han Fei's spiritual beast had already disappeared without a trace. This time, there were many experts from the 36 palaces who had their spiritual beasts swallowed by Han Fei. Suddenly, many people were frightened. Someone said, "No, we can't stay in the Medicine King Heaven." Someone frowned and instantly summoned his spiritual beast to prevent any more problems from happening inside. And this also seemed to clear Wang Yijian's suspicion. Since Han Fei was still there, Wang Yijian was indeed being used by someone. Old Lady Qiu asked, "Yu Tianchan, can you really not catch that kid's spiritual beast?" Yu Tianchan replied, "I really can't. I don't even know where the other side of its body is. Besides, a strange bird took action. Its aura is so terrifying that even I will be restrained." Old Lady Qiu asked, "What should we do? He is simply a scourge. We shouldn't have let the Yin-Yang Heaven survive back then. Now, he is obviously retaliating." Third. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1911. Han Fei's action was a real provocation. He seemed to be saying, "Seal the Medicine King Heaven again if you dare. If you dare to seal it, I dare to eat it." In the end, Mrs. Qiu compromised. She couldn't trap everyone because of Han Fei. She didn't have this ability. So, she might as well let these people go. If Han Fei could hide among them, he would leave with them. Mrs. Qiu said to the void, "Han Fei, all the divine pills were stolen by you. This is a loss for the Medicine King Heaven. I hope you know what to do next." However, Han Fei wouldn't be fooled. "You deliberately opened an opening to let me go? In fact, you're working with the Grand Pure One and the Wuji sect to set up an inescapable net outside. Do you think I'm stupid?" At this moment, in the Imperial Purple Smoke Furnace, Han Fei was absorbing the purple fire. Han Fei found that the essence of this furnace fire was of great help to his body refining. Most importantly, there was a medicinal fragrance in the furnace fire. Han Fei felt that his body was overflowing with energy and was nourishing it. If he cultivated in this Imperial Purple Smoke Furnace, 1 year would be equivalent to 10 years in the outside world. Of course, it would be great if he could put this Imperial Purple Smoke Furnace in his origin sea. In this way, he could cultivate for 300 years in 1 year. Han Fei licked the corner of his mouth. For this amazing way of cultivation, he had to get this Imperial Purple Smoke Furnace. Once the violet smoke cauldron was no longer enough to support his cultivation, he would toss it to the myriad poison ancestor, Huang Jie. That would be equivalent to reaching an agreement with him. After the immortals left one after another, Mrs. Qiu naturally put the furnace back in the alchemy room. Different from normal treasures, an alchemy furnace was a basic requirement for every alchemist. Generally, it wouldn't be put into the body. The furnace was always open and turned on every day to refine overlapping fire. When old Jiang taught Tengu a lesson, Han Fei had also heard it. In fact, this was indeed the case. Mrs. Qiu returned to the alchemy room and threw a batch of medicinal materials into the Imperial Purple Smoke Furnace. Ultra-quality spiritual stones surrounded it, turning into purple fire and burning. Han Fei wondered what kind of pills this old lady was refining now. It would be great if he could eat them. Just then, he heard Dongfang Yueshi, who had shouted at him before, enter the pill room. She said, "Teacher, this is a 6th grade vitality pill refined by your disciple. These few days you've been in a bad mood. You can't be angry about that." You can refine the 6th grade vitality pill now? Old Madame Chiu seemed a little surprised, but then she sighed lightly. I'm afraid I won't be able to obtain a 9th grade divine pill in this lifetime. This time, he thought that it was only a tier 8 divine pill. But who knew that there would still be a pill tribulation at the end, sigh. Dongfang Yueshi said, "Master, you are the master of the Heavenly Medicine Palace, the leader of all alchemists. A grade 9 divine pill might not necessarily be impossible." Old Madame Chiu shook her head slightly. "You're still young, you don't understand the depth of the path of alchemy. Forget it, Yu Xia. I have long wanted to pass the imperial purple smoke furnace to you. But you are still young. After this trip to the Emperor Palace, whether or not you become a king, I will pass the supreme violet smoke cauldron to you. Ever since you were young, your path of alchemy has been bright. Maybe you may be able to break the limit that I can't break." Dongfang Yueshi said, "The supreme violet smoke furnace is a divine weapon of alchemy. I dare not teach it to you." Han Fei didn't think much of the old man and the young girl's deep relationship. This old Madame Chiu was obviously not a good person. The pill was clearly grown by the little vine, but she took it as her own? She thought it was refined by herself, but she didn't even notice it? He really didn't know how her brain worked. "And is this imperial purple smoke furnace yours? Do you want to pass it on to the next generation?" Outside, old Madame Chiu said, "You can refine pills here in the next few days. Feel the effect of the imperial purple smoke furnace in advance." "Yes, master." Han Fei wasn't quite sure what kind of trap old Madame Chiu had arranged outside the Medicine King Heaven. Anyway, he didn't want to go out now. Anyway, he had plenty of time. He would stay in the Medicine King Heaven for another month. At this moment, Han Fei had become one. He didn't stay outside for long, but entered the Origin Sea. That divine pill contained the golden light body technique, so he'd better eat it first. After a moment, Han Fei came to the demon purification pot again, looked at the 7 divine pills, stretched out his hand, and gently pulled the bottom divine pill. It didn't take much effort at all, and this divine pill was pulled down. Huff! When this divine pill was picked up, Han Fei immediately smelled the pill fragrance. Having no time to think, Han Fei immediately stuffed the pill into his mouth, and sat down cross-legged. As soon as this pill entered his mouth, Han Fei immediately felt that he seemed to have comprehended the Tao of space. It was very different from the usual Tao of space. This golden light body technique was a bit like the Big Dipper, which was a kind of half-real and half-illusory spatial technique between reality and the void. Therefore, Han Fei immediately felt that if he practiced this technique, many big arrays shouldn't be able to trap him. Han Fei's mind gradually became immersed in it, as if he were practicing in a dream. With a flash of golden light, he traveled between heaven and earth, which was many times more useful than the universe great shift that the old turtle taught him before. Every time the heaven and earth great shift shifted, there would be a period of time between each shift. It wasn't like continuously shifting with a 2-2-2 sound. However, this golden light body technique was different. Wherever the light shone, he could go. The golden light leap was comparable to a flash of light, which was 300,000 kilometers per second, or 600,000 kilometers. Gulp! Han Fei's eyes were closed, but he kept swallowing saliva. If he mastered it, he would be able to move 600,000 kilometers per second? This speed was beyond Han Fei's imagination. In the dream, Han Fei felt the frequency of the golden light leap. He could perform it about 3 times in one breath. Although there was an interval, it was extremely short. Han Fei couldn't help but be shocked. Based on this speed, how many people would be able to catch up to his speed? Han Fei couldn't help asking, Old Yuan, how fast were you before you opened the sky? The old turtle was taken aback by Han Fei's question, and then said, Speed is not my strong point. However, before I opened the sky, I could move 1,000,000 kilometers at a time with the universe great shift. Han Fei said, Not the universe great shift, but the fastest speed. For example, the speed of breaking through the void, pure speed. The old turtle was silent for a while, then said, Before you open the sky? Then it would be more than 500,000 kilometers in one breath. If I burst out, I'm afraid I can reach 1,000,000 kilometers at the fastest speed. Han Fei was stunned. 1,000,000 kilometers at the fastest speed? The old turtle paused and said, At least? Isn't that fast enough? Han Fei said perfunctorily, Enough, enough. However, Han Fei casually said, By the way, old Yuan, you said that the king's speed is already so fast. Can't he explore the whole world? Just how big is this world? The old turtle couldn't help but say, Me. When everyone became a king, they would ask this question. They all thought that their speed was already fast enough, and that they would definitely be able to finish walking through this world. In fact, more than one person has tried it, but in the end, people only found a few problems. Han Fei's eyelids twitched. What problems? The old turtle explained, One of the problems is that when a person is too fast, he can easily drill into the void. In the end, he can't help but step into the endless void. He can even touch the river of time. So, if he's not careful, he can disappear. Han Fei said in surprise, Will this happen if he's too fast? The old turtle said, The limit of speed seems to be 600,000 kilometers in an instant. Once this speed is exceeded, many problems will occur. Many people just ran and disappeared, never to be seen again. It seems that no one can control this speed, except for the venerable emperor. Han Fei narrowed his eyes. The old turtle was talking about the speed of light. No one can move faster than the speed of light. Because once that limit is reached, there are too many unpredictable things. The old turtle mentioned the endless void and the river of time, which may be felt at the speed of light. And this golden light body technique seemed to have reached the speed of light. And as the old turtle said, if people couldn't move so fast, then he'd better not move at the fastest speed. If something went wrong with his current knowledge and experience, he might not be able to deal with it. Furthermore, even though he had swallowed the elixir, he could not use the golden light body technique to its limit as he pleased. He hadn't tried it yet, so he didn't know how fast it could be. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, What's the other problem? The old turtle said, That is, this world is just too big. Besides, most people will say that the world we are in is actually not a simple world. Han Fei asked, What do you mean? Is it a combination of multiple worlds? The old turtle said, It's a bit similar, but not like this. It seems to be related to a certain realm. I'm a turtle. I've always been sleeping. This empress can't be bothered with this kind of thing like running around looking at territory. Han Fei was speechless. F***ck, this guy has no ambition. So what if you're a turtle? He doesn't have any curiosity at all. Isn't exploring the world the best way to cultivate? Han Fei firmly believed that no matter how big this world was, it couldn't withstand hundreds of thousands of kilometers of running. In the future, he would definitely get to the bottom of this problem. Chapter 1912. In fact, after Han Fei learned the Golden Light Dharma body, he felt that even if he left the Medicine King sky now, Bei Luochen might not be able to stop him. After asking Senior Yuan, Han Fei learned that whether it was the Sea Expansion Realm or the Heavenly Creation Realm, their speed would eventually reach a balance. As for the reason for the difference in speed, it was the problem of how to control space and time if the speed was too fast. The heaven opening stage clearly had greater control. However, this was a question that practically all sea expansion and heaven expansion experts had been chasing after. However, he didn't want to leave yet. The Medicine King Heaven had come. Since the Medicine King Heaven had been one of the main enemies that had encircled the Yin-Yang Heaven, it was only right for him to retaliate. Now that he could not touch the Grand Pure One and the Limitless One, he would first attack the Medicine King Heaven. With this first slash, he had snatched back the vine and obtained the 8-9 profound pill. The second move was naturally the supreme purple smoke cauldron. The biggest problem now was that the exalted purple smoke cauldron had been refined by old Madame Chiu. He wanted to take something that had been refined out? Or, he could kill old Madame Chiu and break her origin sea to snatch it. Otherwise, he could force old Madame Chiu to take the initiative to remove the control of the imperial purple smoke furnace. If Han Fei chose the first method, it was actually quite dangerous. Firstly, there was more than one king in the sky of the Medicine Kings, and there might be more than one king in the outside world as well. If he killed old Madame Chiu now, he would have to break her origin sea. At that time, it would be very easy to be ambushed. Of course, he could hide in old Madame Chiu's origin sea. However, some people might not be unaware of the fact that he had the navigational multidimensional apparatus. But what about threatening old Madame Chiu? If this fellow was stubborn, he would still have to kill her. Han Fei licked the corner of his mouth and decided to rest for a few more days. Half a month later, Dongfang Yueshi was in the middle of concocting a pill, and the pill she was concocting was a 6th grade Tao pattern pill. Because it was extremely rare to use the supreme violet smoke furnace, Dongfang Yueshi was very attentive when refining it. However, Dongfang Yueshi felt that the power of the supreme purple smoke furnace didn't seem to be enough. She thought to herself, maybe I didn't control myself well. Perhaps it was because he had not grasped the essence. However, she had never thought that the problem might lie in the exalted violet smoke furnace itself. As a matter of fact, Dongfang Yueshi had to use a lot of great medicines when the tribulation pills came down. Even old Madame Chiu praised him for his perfect control, but in the end, there was only a 6th grade tranquil pill. Even old Madame Chiu couldn't help but reveal a doubtful expression. It shouldn't be. Your ability to control it is perfect. Logically speaking, he should have refined at least 3 tranquil pills. In the end, how did it become one? Under normal circumstances, once a pill in a pill furnace became useless, it would become the pill furnace's medicinal energy and be absorbed by the pill furnace's own power. Then, when he was refining the pills, he would feed them back to the other pills. This was also the reason why the supreme purple smoke cauldron could casually refine a 3-layer Tao pattern pill. Dongfang Yueshi couldn't help but sweat. Teacher, it might be because Yueshi isn't skilled enough. I think something must have gone wrong somewhere. Madame Chiu frowned. She could not help but have a thought. Could it be that the little vine had absorbed too much of the power of the supreme violet smoke cauldron? So, the effect of the current pill refining was worse than before? She said, Girl Yueshi, get out of the way. I'll refine the next one. Dongfang Yueshi was relieved to see that her teacher was going to refine the pill in person. She thought to herself, I'm still not familiar with 6th grade pills. However, half a month later, when old Madame Chiu opened the furnace, only 1 tranquil pill flew out. Suddenly, old Madame Chiu was confused. She couldn't even refine 6th grade pills now? Dongfang Yueshi was also dumbfounded. Is there something wrong with the supreme purple smoke cauldron? With her teacher's alchemy ability, as long as there were enough materials, she could easily refine 6th grade pills. No matter what, it was impossible for there to be a situation where an entire nest of pills were wasted and only a single pill was left. In the supreme purple smoke cauldron. In the past month, Han Fei had a great time eating. What Han Fei absorbed, of course, was not the pills, but the medicinal power. The purple fire refined the medicinal power and soaked it into his body. After being converted by the stainless mysterious body, 80% of the pure medicinal power of this cauldron of pills entered his body. Han Fei even found that his bones were now slightly turning into golden jade. A pale golden chalcedony-like bone looked quite strange. At present, it was only a small part, less than 10% of his whole body. However, this was enough to show that he was indeed changing. Unfortunately, Han Fei didn't have so much time to waste here. Did old Madame Chiu and Dongfang Yueshi refine pills for 10 years, and he had to stay in this furnace for 10 years? Coincidentally, old Madame Chiu said, maybe the appearance of the 9th-grade divine pill has swallowed most of the medicinal power of the Grand Supreme Purple Smoke Cauldron, causing the effect of the Grand Supreme Purple Smoke Cauldron to deteriorate. But don't panic. Just refine some big pills in large quantities. After a long time, the effect should be restored. I'll refine a furnace of slow pills, which will take about 9 years. Let's wait and see after 9 years. Han Fei was dumbfounded when he heard this. Was it really that easy to refine pills? 9 years just to refine a furnace of pills? Soon, old Madame Chiu threw thousands of kinds of great medicines into the Grand Supreme Purple Smoke Cauldron, ordered a half-king realm powerhouse to guard it, and then left. Han Fei wanted to ask old Madame Chiu to stay on the spot. However, considering that the old lady threw thousands of medicinal materials at once, he would feel bad if he didn't eat them. He might as well use them to temper his body first. It wouldn't be too late to leave after the medicinal power was consumed. 7 or 8 days later, the medicinal power of the thousands of medicinal materials in the Grand Supreme Purple Smoke Cauldron had basically been exhausted, all transformed by Han Fei into the power of body tempering. Han Fei wished the old lady could throw thousands of more medicinal materials in. He could stay here until old Madame Chiu went bankrupt. Seeing that the Grand Supreme Purple Smoke Cauldron was useless, Han Fei thought of something. A golden light leaped and appeared directly in the alchemy room. When Han Fei appeared, he saw a half-king realm alchemist's face change drastically, and he was about to shout. However, Han Fei's pressure descended and directly pressed him to the ground, unable to move. With a thought, Han Fei hooked out the sun-moon shell of this half-king realm alchemist, and then buckled the void lines to control this half-king realm alchemist. This time, he didn't even have the power to resist. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. The half-king realm alchemist calmed down and left the alchemy room. At this time, Han Fei said, "Old Yuan, prepare the turtle shell sky sealing array. As soon as old Madame Chiu comes in, I will immediately seal the array. Let's catch this old lady first." The old turtle said, "Just catch her alive? We're in someone else's territory." Han Fei said, "Cripple her first and then catch her. After all, the Medicine King Sky has come this time, so he must take the Grand Supreme Purple Smoke Cauldron." "Wait, don't panic. I have to leave first." Han Fei directly used the Gemini Divine technique. The white mist stayed in the alchemy room and entered the Origin Sea in the blink of an eye. And the black mist had quietly left. With the Han Wanxiang instrument as a guide, he directly found the treasure house of the Medicine King Valley. Ever since old Lady Chiu's 9th-grade divine pill was stolen, she didn't seem to care about alchemy anymore. Putting himself in her shoes, it seemed to be the same. She had worked hard for too long and was about to succeed at the last step, but it was ruined by someone. It was a good thing that she didn't break down. However, instead of going to alchemy, old Lady Chiu also began to teach and guide the younger generation. At the same time, she often sensed the entire Medicine King Sky, for fear that Han Fei hadn't left yet. At this time, old Lady Chiu came out of a cave house and sensed a familiar figure. She immediately said, "Miao He, why don't you stay in my alchemy room? What are you doing here?" The half-king realm alchemist named Miao, he immediately bowed and said, "Master, please take a look at the Grand Supreme Purple Smoke Cauldron. There may be something wrong with this cauldron." Old Lady Chiu's expression changed slightly, and her figure disappeared. Then, she appeared directly in the alchemy room. Because this was the place where she refined pills, and she didn't like to live in the Divine Palace, this place had always been surrounded by arrays. However, when she saw it, old Lady Chiu was stunned. Damn, there's more than a problem. Obviously, the alchemy had stopped. She planned to spend 9 years refining a cauldron of medicine, but the cauldron went out before the 9 days were up? Was there something wrong with it? Old Lady Chiu was about to ask, but suddenly, she felt that a trace of strange power between heaven and earth had blocked her. Before she had time to call for help, she suddenly felt a fatal crisis. Her soul seemed to be about to explode. The only thing she could do in time was to summon a divine pellet to form a barrier around her soul to block her own soul. Pucci, the next moment, old Lady Chiu felt that a terrifying power that could make her body explode was cutting her body and destroying her will in an instant. But at this moment, at least old Lady Chiu hadn't been slaughtered yet. So she saw a person, a young man with a smile, exactly the same as the Han Fei she had seen in the portrait. Han Fei smiled leisurely. Master Chiu, we finally meet. Nice to meet you.